Chapter 1581. The reason why Lu Ping had to take such a huge risk to subdue this thunder origin was naturally because he had no other choice. In order to snatch the 7-treasure lightning calabash from him, Peng Daoren had released a third of the thunder origin he had condensed in one fell swoop. This was so that he could not avoid it and could only resist the impact of this absolute power. Lu Ping could naturally choose to resist it head-on, instead of taking the risk of absorbing it. However, both of them carried the same risk for Lu Ping. Since that was the case, why didn't Lu Ping choose the path that would greatly benefit him if he succeeded? Moreover, Lu Ping was not blindly reckless. The origin he condensed came from the triple light sacred water. Before Lu Ping became a true spirit, one of the 3 heaven-grade spirit waters that he had refined was the genuine lightning tribulation water. It was the condensation of the essence of the lightning tribulation. Normally, it was already a great blessing for a cultivator to be able to refine one portion, and it was only a matter of time before they became a powerful cultivator in the future. Moreover, Lu Ping had refined 3 portions in one go. Of course, although the thunder tribulation water was the essence of the thunder tribulation, its quality was still far from being comparable to the origin of thunder. Above the thunder tribulation, there was the heavenly punishment, and only those above the heavenly punishment could touch the origin of thunder. However, Lu Ping's true essence contained the power of thunder. After all, they were of the same origin, so naturally, the thunder tribulation water would be of some help. Apart from that, Lu Ping's greatest reliance was that he had once used his 7-treasure lightning calabash to snatch a drop of the thunder origin from the Yuan clan during the Battle of Shang Mountain and refined it. After that, he obtained something similar when he was killing the remnants of the Yuan clan. After Lu Ping became a true spirit, he tried to use this as an opportunity to cultivate the thunder origin and walk the path of cultivating all 8 realms at the same time. However, a few drops of the thunder origin were far from enough to cultivate the thunder origin. The first dragon scale of the true spirit dragon, which represented the thunder origin, had only been half-soaked by the thunder origin. It was far from completely cultivating all 8 realms at the same time. Even so, these treasures were enough to lay a solid foundation for him to cultivate the origin of thunder. When Taoist Peng attacked him with the origin of thunder, Lu Ping had no choice but to morph into his true spirit form. With the Sanguang godly water as the foundation, he turned his true spirit ocean into his true spirit dragon's territory. Then, he cast out his natal pure yang dragon pearl to suppress Taoist Peng. With so many methods, in addition to the 7-treasure lightning calabash weakening the thunder origin, and the help of the Longhuai ancestor, Lu Ping was still walking on the edge of life and death, while suppressing the thunder origin and cultivating the thunder ability. The true spirit dragon circled above the sea of origin. Lu Ping had already cultivated all 7 realms at the same time to suppress the chaos in the sea of origin. The thunder origin was running amok in the sea of origin. It could not completely merge with the sea of origin. The first scale of the true spirit dragon, which represented the thunder origin, had already been soaked by 3/4 of the thunder origin. However, the progress was very slow. At this moment, Lu Ping's control of the spiritual force had reached its limit. Suppressing the thunder origin consumed not only a large amount of spiritual force, but also a huge amount of spiritual force. The thunder origin could clearly destroy a cultivator's spiritual force, but Lu Ping had to rely on his huge spiritual force to control everything in front of him. In addition, the thing that was bearing the most pressure was Lu Ping's physical body. In fact, when Lu Ping cultivated the first realm of the true spirit realm to perfection, he could fuse his physical body with his true spirit and completely transform into a dragon's true spirit. At that time, there would be no difference between his physical body and true spirit. Moreover, it would allow Lu Ping's strength to greatly increase. At this moment, Xiang Laozu, who was entangled with Peng Daoren, and the heavily injured butterfly fairy were both using this method. They could switch between their physical body and true spirit at any time. As for Longhuai ancestor, he had never transformed his body into a true spirit. Perhaps he had the same idea as Lu Ping. The dragon scales on the true spirit dragon's body, that represented the magical power of the origin, had already stood up. The true spirit dragon was doing its best to revolve around the pure yang dragon bead. Using the dragon bead as a medium, it continuously turned its own spiritual force into a magical power that was applied to the sea of origin. It suppressed the thunder origin and tried its best to fuse it with the sea of origin to open the thunder origin. However, no matter how much Lu Ping suppressed the fusion, he could only use 3/4 of the dragon scales to open the thunder origin. At this time, Lu Ping's spiritual force and true essence had already reached their limit. If there was no turning point, Lu Ping would have to give up on the thunder origin in order to protect himself. He would even have to destroy most of his sea of origin, causing heavy damage to his own foundation. At this critical moment, Lu Ping was in a state of indigestion after absorbing enough of the lightning source. But just as he was about to fall into a crisis, the thunder gourd suddenly spat out a stream of lightning source that had been completely subdued by the thunder gourd. Although this source of thunder was extremely small, it became the key to breaking out of Lu Ping's predicament at this moment of life and death. The Thunder Seven Treasures calabash had followed Lu Ping almost from the moment it was formed. It had been nourished by Lu Ping's spiritual force and had grown under the watchful eyes of Lu Ping. Although it was not Lu Ping's life spirit treasure, it was one of the spirit treasures that had followed Lu Ping for the longest time. It could almost communicate with Lu Ping's mind. In Lu Ping's most critical moment, the Thunder Seven Treasures calabash sensed that something was wrong. After sending out this thunder origin, it didn't consume too much energy before it was completely absorbed by the sea of origin. Then this thunder origin flowed upwards, following the origin dragon pearl, all the way into the body of the true spirit. Then, the first thunder attribute dragon scale began to shine with a brilliant light. With the help of this thunder origin, it successfully dyed the rest of the dragon scale. Lu Ping's true dragon spirit's thunder elemental origin energy was finally awakened. Initially, the thunder elemental origin energy didn't show any signs of merging with the sea of origin energy. But the moment the thunder elemental origin energy was awakened, half of it was drawn out by the first dragon scale. Countless runes appeared on the dragon scale, flashing with the power of lightning. Lu Ping's first thunder elemental origin energy was drawn on the dragon scale. And the first thunder attribute magical ability that Lu Ping condensed came from the inheritance of the Yuan family. After the Battle of Shang Mountain, the Yuan family had collapsed, and the foundation that they had accumulated since the opening of the heavens had all been taken by the major forces that had participated in that battle. Among them, the thunder attribute magical abilities that the Yuan family had inherited had been deliberately looted by Jinling. Just as Lu Ping had successfully opened his thunder attribute magical ability and condensed his first thunder attribute magical ability, becoming a Realm 8 cultivator that could stand shoulder to shoulder with Peng Daoren, who had reconstructed his body, the thunder attribute magical ability that was originally resisting Lu Ping's sea of origin completely calmed down. And after subduing the thunder attribute magical ability that was originally used to kill him, the sea of origin surged up. Together with the remaining thunder attribute magical ability that had not yet been refined, the thunder attribute magical ability was absorbed into the pure yang dragon pearl, and then swallowed by the true spirit dragon. The purple gas in the surroundings condensed, and as the true spirit dragon returned to his body, Lu Ping took a deep breath. The cultivation changes brought about by the 8 realms simultaneous cultivation made Lu Ping deeply feel the increase in his strength. And this qualitative change came from the opening of the thunder attribute magical ability, which was an extremely difficult threshold for true spirit realm cultivators to cross. Now that this threshold had been broken, Lu Ping had the potential to temporarily stand shoulder to shoulder with Peng Daoren. Chapter 1582. The 7 realms cultivation was broken, and the 8 realms cultivation was also interrupted before it reached perfection. Peng Daoren was the same as Lu Ping. He had opened the 8 sources, but his cultivation was still in the first true spirit realm. But even like this, facing the joint attacks of Longhuai Ancestor and Xiang Laozu, Peng Daoren could still advance and retreat as he pleased. Instead, as time went on, Xiang Laozu and Longhui Ancestor were once again suppressed by Peng Daoren. Strictly speaking, Peng Daoren hadn't even reached the peak of the first true spirit realm. His cultivation was even lower than Longhui Ancestor and the others. The different attributed techniques were skillfully connected. Although Peng Daoren couldn't combine the different attributed techniques to form a new and even more powerful technique like when he reached the 8th true spirit realm, his dazzling control over the various techniques allowed Xiang Laozu and Longhui Ancestor to have cultivations not weaker than Peng Daoren. But they couldn't keep up with Peng Daoren's attacks, falling into a passive situation. If it wasn't for Xiang Laozu having the 5-element spirit light fan that could weaken a lot of the 5 elemental techniques, and the good fortune cauldron's replenishment, even if Xiang Laozu had the number 1 tyrannical turtle avatar in the world, he would have already collapsed under Peng Daoren's attacks. Longhui Ancestor's situation wasn't any better. The crystal hammer had already been shattered by Peng Daoren and 3 of the heaven and earth wine cauldron's 5 artifact spirits had been destroyed. But the tree branch life spirit treasure in his hand was not a small matter. At this time, Longhui Ancestor could no longer hide his strength under Peng Daoren's suppression. His cultivation of the 6 realms was released, and although it couldn't keep up with Peng Daoren's ability, he could still protect himself with the spirit tree spirit treasure in his hand. Longhui Ancestor had really hidden his strength. With the 6 realms at the same time, Longhui Ancestor finally transformed into a true spirit. He used the wood jiao to achieve Dao, and was also the original body of a 10,000-year-old dragon locust tree. After transforming into a true spirit, his huge body far exceeded Lu Ping's true spirit dragon. After all, it had tens of thousands of years of accumulation. Perhaps in terms of bloodline, Lu Ping's starting point was higher, but in terms of accumulation, Longhui Ancestor was stronger. Ancestor Xiang and Ancestor Longhui withdrew their true spirit bodies at the same time, causing their situation to improve slightly. However, in next to no time, they fell into a passive state under Daoist Ping's even more ferocious suppression. Even though Peng Daoren cultivated 8 realms at the same time, and did not cultivate any of the original elemental attributes to perfection, he used the life fiend as a foundation, and absorbed large amounts of original spiritual energy to reconstruct his corporeal body, which far exceeded the 2's true spirit bodies. A bolt of lightning suddenly exploded in front of him, scaring Xiang Laozu, who was concentrating on defending against Peng Daoren's attack, so much that he almost turned around and fled. When he looked over in the blink of an eye, he saw a few layers of ripples in the void, and a few indiscernible wind blades had already sneaked into the space around him. When they were about to attack together, they were obstructed by this lightning spell that crossed the sky. Xiang Laozu's first reaction was that help had come. His expression immediately brightened, but then he realized that it was actually a lightning thunder-type supernatural power. Only a primordial supernatural power could obstruct a primordial supernatural power. Then, who was this thunder-type primordial supernatural power? Lu Ping, this human cultivator. It was actually him. And it could only be him. He was actually able to survive the attack of Peng Daoren's thunder-type supernatural power. He was actually able to use the thunder-type supernatural power for his own use, and activate the thunder-type supernatural power cultivation. There was a prerequisite for activating the thunder-type supernatural power cultivation, and that was to activate all 7 major supernatural powers. This also meant that Lu Ping had already cultivated 7 realms at the same time before. Now, just like Peng Daoren, he had successfully cultivated 8 realms at the same time. Xiang Laozu was not the only one who was shocked. Longhui Ancestor was also in disbelief the moment Lu Ping made his move. On the side, Peng Daoren even shouted, "Impossible! How can you activate 7 realms at the same time? How can you activate the thunder-type supernatural power? This is impossible, absolutely impossible." In his opinion, when he mobilized 1/3 of the thunder-type supernatural power he had accumulated to kill a human cultivator, Lu Ping was already dead. But now, not only did this human cultivator not die, he even sacrificed his own thunder essence to Lu Ping. Lu Ping had profited from his misfortune, and was now able to cultivate the thunder essence. What was most difficult for Taoist Peng to accept was the fact that ever since he started his plan to split the sky open, he had only barely managed to reach the 8th level after overcoming many obstacles. But this human cultivator had only cultivated for a short period of time, yet he was already on par with him. How could Taoist Peng accept this? The enraged Peng Daoren displayed his invincible might. Even with Lu Ping's help, the three of them could not do anything to Peng Daoren for a while. Often, when the others only used one supernatural power, Peng Daoren would have already used 2 or 3 supernatural powers in succession. Furthermore, after Taoist Peng unleashed his abilities, he was able to rapidly change his stance midway by relying on the mutual augmentation and restraint of his essence to deal with any mishaps that might occur at any time. Furthermore, he was able to avoid wasting his true essence to the greatest extent. This was also the key to why Taoist Peng was able to deal with the combined attacks of the three of them with ease. Although Peng Daoren had not cultivated any of his sources to perfection, each of his 7 sources had condensed 7 or 8 supernatural powers. Although the thunder source had been destroyed the most, he had condensed 3 or 4 supernatural powers. The number of supernatural powers he had far surpassed Lu Ping and the others. Lu Ping quickly saw the clues. Although most of Peng Daoren's strength came from his tyrannical body, his quick control of the supernatural powers, and his dazzling adaptability, behind these methods was Peng Daoren's powerful divine sense maintaining everything. If the current Peng Daoren was compared to the Peng Daoren at the beginning of the world's creation, then perhaps the only difference would be Peng Daoren's divine sense, which was still equivalent to the 7th true spirit realm. Restrict his divine sense. Peng Daoren's expression suddenly changed, and his fierce eyes immediately looked at Lu Ping. It was clear that Lu Ping's words had caught Peng Daoren's weakness. The moment Lu Ping shouted out a warning, the Longhuai ancestor had already inserted the life source spirit treasure in his hand into the heaven and earth wine cauldron. A blue branch on the spirit treasure quickly turned blue, and a bud slowly grew on the branch, gradually forming a flower bud. As the heaven and earth wine cauldron continued to pour spiritual energy into the spirit tree, the flower bud slowly bloomed, and a black mist came out from the center of the flower. The wisp of black mist seemed light, but when it spread out, it turned into a thick, rolling fog that quickly enveloped Taoist Peng. This was the poisonous mist imprisoned by the heavenly poison wall. At the end of the day, the firmament of poison wall was similar to the myriad poison source potion that Lu Ping controlled. Both originated from the poison pellet concocted by Taoist Gui in the past. The only difference was that Lu Ping's myriad poison source potion was more toxic, but it couldn't spread and cover an area as easily as the firmament of poison wall. Chapter 1583. The poisonous fog in the firmament of myriad poisons naturally had a great restrictive effect on divine thoughts. The moment the Longhuai ancestor made his move, Lu Ping had indeed sensed a subtle change in Peng Daoren's magical power. However, this change was completely unfathomable to Lu Ping and the others. This was because Peng Daoren's divine thoughts were too broad. Even though the poisonous fog was restricting him, the damage to Peng Daoren's strength was still limited. A bewitching black flame suddenly ignited in the black mist and spread to all the places that the black mist could reach. The swaying black flame always gave off an indescribable feeling, as though an abyss of hidden mysteries was open to you, causing you to willingly devote all your attention to it while your heart was in a trance. Black prism poisonous fire. Originally, it was just an ordinary heaven and earth strange fire. However, as Lu Ping continued to devour the world's strange poisons, especially the poisonous fog in the firmament of myriad poisons, and the golden fog formed by the myriad poisons liquid, the power of this heaven and earth strange fire rose greatly. Now, with the help of the power of the poisonous fog in the firmament of myriad poisons, its power had more than doubled. No matter how strong Peng Daoren's divine thoughts were, he had no choice but to face this method. Peng Daoren's response was also very simple. A thunderball suddenly fell into the black flame. Then, the thunderball exploded, and a thunder net spread out in all directions with the thunderball as the center. All the poisonous fog and black prism poisonous fire within the range of the thunder net, were rapidly weakened, and even melted. The origin of lightning could cleanse the world of all evil and sinister methods, and its might was indisputably the strongest of the 8 great origins. Whether it was the poisonous mist hidden in the sky wall, or the dark prison venom fire that fed on strange poisons, in front of Taoist Peng's origin of lightning, they melted like snow under the scorching sun. Another bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Countless thunder lines split from this thick bolt of lightning. They were densely packed like the branches of a giant tree, or like a huge lightning broom. They swept away the thunder net that Peng Daoren used to wash away the black fog and black prism poisonous fire. This bolt of lightning was Lu Ping's lightning elemental essence. Naturally, only the lightning elemental essence could defend against the lightning elemental essence. Not to mention, the lightning elemental essence was a type of essence that was highly destructive to divine sense. After all, his cultivation was not enough. Peng Daoren had no choice but to temporarily retract his divine thoughts to avoid the attack. Fortunately, this kind of large-scale killing magical power did not distinguish between friend and foe. Although Lu Ping had broken Peng Daoren's thunder net, it would not cover a large area. Otherwise, it would restrict the other 2 people who had joined hands with him. Although Peng Daoren's divine thoughts were only partially restricted, it was enough for Peng Daoren's magical power to change between attacks. Xiang Laozu also realized the importance of restraining Peng Daoren's divine thoughts. He reached out and patted the cauldron of creation above his head. The huge body of the cauldron immediately began to spin rapidly. 5-colored yuan qi drifted out from the cauldron. However, it was no longer used to replenish Xiang Laozu's own real essence. Instead, it was like 5-colored dust that drifted in all directions. After the 5 elemental origin dust dispersed, it contaminated the divine thoughts that were everywhere. As a result, the cultivators had no choice but to give up on the contaminated divine thoughts. Xiang Laozu still seemed to be a little worried. He simply waved the 5 elemental spirit light fan in his hand. The 5 elemental origin dust spread out even more. As expected, the connection of Peng Daoren's magical powers became more and more disorderly. Although this change in rhythm was extremely subtle, for the few people who were fighting, it was enough for them to counterattack. The sword of true spirit whistled through the air and cut into Peng Daoren's magical power. After that, it directly broke the water elemental origin power that was reversing to wood elemental origin power. On the other hand, Peng Daoren had already spread out an even denser lightning net. However, the area covered by this lightning net was much smaller than when he had destroyed the poisonous mist and black prism poison fire. This lightning net was clearly targeted at Xiang Laozu's 5 elemental origin power. Although Peng Daoren's divine thoughts had been continuously restricted by Lu Ping and the others, it was still far from enough for the 3 of them to completely suppress Peng Daoren. Although Lu Ping had interrupted Peng Daoren's transformation of magical power, it allowed Longhuai Ancestor to take the opportunity to use the numinous treasure to try and counterattack Peng Daoren. However, even though Peng Daoren's speed of transformation of magical power was restricted, it was still much faster than Lu Ping and the others. Among the 3 of them, the only one who could match Peng Daoren in the transformation of magical power was Lu Ping, who was also a level 8 cultivator. However, his speed of transformation of magical power was still slower than Peng Daoren's. He could only follow behind Peng Daoren and react passively. Golden mist suddenly appeared around Lu Ping. In the blink of an eye, it had filled a radius of dozens of feet. The golden mist that was emitted by the 10,000 poison source liquid was 100 times more powerful than the golden poisonous mist that Lu Ping had encountered in the 7 Stars Cave Heaven's Golden Valley. Peng Daoren snorted. He had no choice but to once again use his thunder attribute magical power to destroy the influence of the poisonous mist. This undoubtedly gave Xiang Laozu and Longhuai Ancestor a chance to get rid of the passive suppression. The 3 of them gradually had a tacit understanding. The 3 of them took turns to use magical power to suppress the divine thoughts, maintaining the suppression of Peng Daoren's divine thoughts. Although this suppression had a negligible effect on Peng Daoren's strength, at least it allowed the 3 of them to fight against Peng Daoren from being suppressed to being able to find an opportunity to fight back. It was a pity that Lu Ping had left the Nine Dragons Bell in Junling as an inheritance treasure. Otherwise, with the power of the Nine Dragons Bell, it could disrupt and even suppress Peng Doran's divine thoughts from beginning to end. And at this moment, a bloody light suddenly inserted itself into the battle, where the three of them were besieging Peng Doran. The timing was very precise. It was the moment when Peng Doran's divine thoughts were suppressed. The butterfly fairy, who had been seriously injured by Peng Doran and was on the verge of death, suddenly launched an attack. The appearance of the blood transformation needle was not only unexpected by Lu Ping and the others, but also by Peng Doran. The bloody mist that lingered around the blood transformation needle was originally the best method to erode divine thoughts, but this method was also the most restrained by the thunder attribute magical power. However, at this time, Peng Doran's thunder attribute magical power was focused on dealing with the thought-dissolve powder that Lu Ping had scattered. Under the sneak attack, no matter how resourceful Peng Doran was, he could not display a method to restrain the blood transformation needle for a while. There was a low swoosh sound. In the past, the bloody mist that lingered around the blood transformation needle was actually actively peeling off and spreading this time. Peng Doran felt that there was another extremely evil force invading his divine thoughts. At this time, he did not even have time to expel it, because the force that was even more abominable than the one that was eroding his divine thoughts had already rushed towards his body. The blood transformation needle hit. Chapter 1584. The butterfly fairy had yet to recover after being sent flying by Peng Doran's sudden attack. Coupled with the fact that the Longhui ancestor and the other two were in a hurry to besiege Peng Doran, everyone ignored the existence of the heavily injured butterfly fairy for a moment. However, just when everyone thought that the butterfly fairy was probably in danger, she suddenly launched an attack. Moreover, she chose the moment when Peng Doran could not take care of himself. The blood-killing needle hit. Daoist Peng roared out. His voice was filled with pain, shock, and fury. As the heaven-splitting ancestor, probably no one present understood the power of the blood-dissolving needle better than him. Even the butterfly fairy probably did not control all the power of the blood-dissolving needle. However, Daoist Peng knew just how fearful his body was of the god blood-dissolving needle. The reconstruction of his body came from the baleful aura of the dead creatures in this world, and it was similar to the origin of the god blood-dissolving needle, a divine artifact that split the heavens. Thus, the strength of Daoist Peng's reconstructed body might be the strongest in this world, but before the god blood-dissolving needle, its resistance was negligible. Although the blood-killing needle had many strange techniques, its quality was not enough to be used in a head-on confrontation. However, it could restrain the protective techniques of most cultivators. Therefore, it was mostly used to attack when the opponent was unprepared and could not dodge in time. It rarely failed. Although the blood-killing needle had many miraculous abilities, it could only penetrate half of the blood light formed by the artifact when it hit Peng Doran's body this time. It could not go any further. The bloody light invaded Daoist Peng's fleshly body, and the needle-sized wound immediately began to fester to the size of a finger. This was all thanks to Daoist Peng's powerful fleshly body. Although the baleful life form and the bloody light of the divine blood transformation needle were of the same origin, they were mutually restraining. If it were any other cultivator, the moment the divine blood transformation needle struck them, the needle would have pierced through their fleshly body, incapable of stopping it from melting away. Peng Doran did not even have time to resist the joint attack of Lu Ping and the other two. As he retreated, he stretched out his right thumb and index finger to pinch the end of the blood-killing needle that was exposed outside his skin. A ball of lightning exploded between his fingers, and the blood mist lingering on the needle was immediately expelled by the lightning, allowing Peng Doran to firmly hold the artifact. A purple light flashed across Peng Doran's face, and the lightning between his fingers did not stop. Instead, it grew stronger and stronger. The blood mist lingering on the blood-killing needle was slowly compressed by the lightning, and the lightning even seeped into his body through the wound. Peng Doran's eyebrows twitched slightly. Clearly, The lightning was causing him intense pain as it rampaged through his wound. However, under the restraint of the lightning, the rate at which the wound was festering was greatly reduced. Lu Ping saw all of this. Although the baleful aura of life and the blood mist were mutually restraining each other, the origin of thunder was undoubtedly the bane of both. The blood-killing needle was slowly pulled out of Peng Doran's body. With every inch it was pulled out, the lightning between his fingers would expel the blood mist lingering around the needle by an inch. The lightning would then spread to the needle by an inch. By the time the entire needle was pulled out, the blood mist lingering on the needle had been compressed to a tiny red dot on the tip of the needle. The 2 fingers Taoist Peng used to pinch the blood-transmuting needle had almost been dyed purple gold by the lightning bolts. Like tiny electric snakes, the lightning bolts coiled around the blood-transmuting needle. Under the corrosion of the lightning bolts, clouds of blood mist were peeled off from the scarlet spot and turned into nothingness. A shrill scream suddenly came from the butterfly fairy's mouth. It turned out that the blood mist was originally the source of the blood-killing needle. Now that Peng Doran had evaporated the blood mist with the lightning's origin, it was obvious that he wanted to completely destroy this heaven-opening artifact. Butterfly Fairy, who was connected to the blood-killing needle, would naturally be seriously injured again. Lu Ping and the other 2 attacked with all their might. However, at this time, Peng Doran would rather use his body to resist the attacks of the 3 people and completely destroy this heaven-opening artifact. By the time Peng Doran threw away the blood-killing needle in his hand with a sneer, the butterfly fairy in the distance was already on the verge of death. However, everyone's attack was not without effect. Although Peng Doran had pulled out the blood-killing needle from his body and completely destroyed this heaven-opening artifact, the wound on his body was only barely contained. Under the siege of everyone, he was unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of the other, and the wound on his body expanded again. At this time, Lu Ping could also clearly sense that Peng Doran was becoming more and more powerless to deal with the 3 people. It seemed that the operation of his quintessential essence was extremely obscure, obviously affected by the wound. Longhua Ancestor was the first to throw out his natal spiritual treasure. The 9 branches treasure tree instantly turned into a towering tree. Branches hung down from the tree, forming a huge cage, to completely imprison Peng Doran in it. However, Longhua Ancestor's 9 branches treasure tree was, after all, incomplete. Longhua Ancestor, who cultivated 6 realms at the same time, could not completely fill in the gaps of the treasure tree. Peng Doran immediately found a gap to break out. Countless golden lights instantly weaved into a sword net, blocking the exit that Peng Doran was about to break out of. Behind him, several branches swept towards Peng Doran, but unexpectedly, Peng Doran's figure disappeared in an instant. His figure broke out of another gap in the encirclement by a hair's breadth. At this time, Lao Tzu simply transformed into his true spirit form, using the huge body of Ba Gui to block the possibility of Peng Doran breaking out of the encirclement. The encirclement became smaller and smaller, and the space that Peng Doran could move about became smaller and smaller. Longhua Ancestor had already personally blocked the last gap of the 9 branches treasure tree. Finally, for the first time, Peng Doran was completely besieged by the 3 people. Peng Doran turned into lightning and went straight for Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, after Lu Ping absorbed the thunder source and cultivated 8 realms at the same time, his strength had leaped above the 3 people. Yet, Peng Doran still chose to break out of the encirclement towards Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping was surprised, he did not panic. He pointed the sword of true spirit at the lightning that Peng Doran had turned into. As the sword moved, there were bursts of lightning. After Lu Ping opened up the thunder source, the thunderclap sword technique, which was originally his natural power, became much more powerful with the help of the thunder source. It was almost on par with the Sea of All Rivers technique that Lu Ping had studied. Using the thunderclap sword technique to stop Peng Doran from breaking out of the encirclement, Lu Ping was confident that he could block it. However, just to be cautious, Lu Ping still took a few steps in the air. With each step, a lotus bloomed under his feet. After a few steps, he set up a formation in the air. Lightning exploded, and the power of the sword of true spirit surged. The tip of the sword of true spirit constantly changed directions, but it always locked onto Peng Doran's true body. However, at this moment, Lu Ping's expression changed and he shouted, "Xiang Laozu, be careful." Chapter 1585. Lu Ping used all his means, and found that the direction in which Peng Doran broke out was not in the direction where he was. Instead, he used his magical power to completely create a puppet phantom that was exactly the same as Peng Doran himself, and had the same origin aura to confuse him, while the puppet itself went to the direction where Xiang Laozu was. This was obviously another of Daoist Peng's original skills. Compared to the previous skill that was similar to Lu Ping's, art of deceiving the heavens and sea crossing art, this skill was even more mystical. Furthermore, the power of the next skill was even more shocking to Lu Ping. Lu Ping reminded loudly, and was about to jump forward to help. Unexpectedly, a strange wave was suddenly captured by Lu Ping's divine thought. He screamed, and the escape light was forcibly dispersed. The sword light turned, and the fine sword light had surrounded Lu Ping's entire body. At the same time, the lotus array diagram under his feet suddenly closed, forming a double protection with the sword light. Who? There was no earth-shattering power as imagined. There was only a whistling like a breeze passing through. However, at this time, Lu Ping felt that the surrounding space was rapidly compressing, like a bone-scraping steel knife brushing past his body. In the creaking sound, the sword array formed by the seepage sword technique had been broken by the invisible space storm. The closed lotus array diagram looked like a withered willow that was ravaged by the wind. Lu Ping really did not expect that the puppet phantom formed by Peng Doran's magical power was not only indistinguishable, but it could also contain such a tyrannical space power under the self-explosion. If it were not for Lu Ping's warning, and the full power of this magical power erupted, although it could not kill him, it could seriously injure him. But in this way, Lu Ping no longer had the time to care about Xiang Laozu, who was guarding the other side of the gap. When Lu Ping's previous shout reminded Xiang Laozu, Peng Doran's diversion had already arrived in front of Xiang Laozu. At this time, Lu Ping was blocked by the magical power left by Peng Doran, and Longhui Ancestor did not hurry to help until Lu Ping shouted. But after all, it was too late. At this time, Xiang Laozu could only rely on his own strength to face Peng Doran's breakthrough. The huge Ba Gui real body tightly filled the gap formed by the 9 treasured trees. The turtle's head shrank in the shell, and the teapot-shaped creation cauldron hovered above it, dripping 5-colored yuan qi from the mouth of the cauldron. However, in front of the attack that Peng Doran had prepared for a long time, Xiang Laozu was not sure that he could block it. But now that he had finally trapped Peng Doran in the formation, once he broke out, he did not know how much it would cost to defeat him again. Although the Ba Gui real spirit's head was hidden in the shell, it did not retreat in the face of danger. It just threw a 5-colored feather fan directly into the creation cauldron. "Thief, how dare you!" Peng Doran's furious roar came from afar, and the extreme speed in the blink of an eye caused his voice to seem unusually sharp. The 5-element spiritual light fan was Peng Doran's natal spirit treasure at the beginning of the world. Although things were no longer the same, this spirit treasure was still extremely important to the current Peng Doran. But now, Xiang Laozu had thrown this treasure into the creation cauldron to be refined in front of him. So how could Peng Doran not fly into a rage? However, Xiang Laozu also had no other choice. In the face of Peng Doran's powerful attack, and under the situation that he could not obtain the help of the other two, he had no choice but to reluctantly abandon this spirit treasure. He only needed to persist until Longhui and Lu Ping arrived. After the 5-element spiritual light fan was thrown into the creation cauldron, surging origin chi of the 5 elements flew out from the cauldron and entered Laozu's colossal Ba Gui real body. The 5-element spirit light fan was originally a life-numinous treasure that Taoist Peng had made by gathering the 5 colors of the original source from his own feathers. Now that it had returned to its original source, and Patriarch Xiang himself was a person who cultivated all 5 realms at the same time, with the help of this fan, his cultivation level instantly soared. Stream after stream of original source chi condensed on the back of the armor to form the original magical power seed, turning it into original magical power. Amidst the deafening rumbles, boundless origin chi wreaked havoc everywhere. Origin chi of various attributes clashed with one another, turning into dazzling light and mist in the air. Longhua ancestors' 9 branches treasured tree swayed, all of its drooping branches curling up. As he roared in pain, cracks appeared all over Xiang Laozu's sturdy shell. The creation cauldron hovering in the air immediately tumbled backwards, and the origin chi of the 5 elements that overflowed from it spread everywhere. The colossal Ba Gui real body was actually pushed back by Peng Doran's attack, causing a gap to immediately appear in the formation laid out by the 9 branches treasured tree. Although Peng Doran's attack had caused great damage to Xiang Laozu's physical body and his true spirit body, he had still managed to block Peng Doran's attack. Although he had been pushed back by Peng Doran had also been blocked by Xiang Laozu's all-out attack. In fact, he couldn't even take the opportunity to break through the gap that Xiang Laozu had created. When he caught his breath and intended to charge out again, he noticed the 6 branches that hung down from the surroundings had already encircled him from different directions. At the same time, there was a shapeless wave that pressed towards him. It was even to the extent that compared to Ancestor Long Huai's full force encirclement, the might carried by this shapeless wave caused Taoist Peng to feel even more uneasy. "You've actually obtained the magical power created by the 4-legged serpent." Lu Ping said nothing. He only used the Jinyuan in his body as a primer, mobilizing all the chi of origin in the void, and performed the art of changing seas and mulberry fields to the limit that he could control. For a moment, even Peng Doran himself felt as if the time and space around him were changing. This feeling was even more terrifying than the art of falling petals in profusion, which stripped away one's vitality. This was because the latter happened in an extremely short period of time, but Lu Ping's magical power made everything slow and cumbersome, allowing one to experience this fear clearly and abnormally slowly. Xiang Laozu finally rushed forward again and blocked the gap. While Peng Doran had also completely broken free from Lu Ping's magical power and blocked the siege of Longhua ancestors' natal spiritual treasure. Lu Ping and the other 2 heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed as if everything was about to fall into their control, and the situation was about to be completely turned around. But right at this moment, Peng Doran rushed forward again, and the target of his attack this time was still Laozu. This time, not only did Laozu not expect this, even Lu Ping and Long Huai were shocked. Both of them hurriedly lent a hand, but the situation this time seemed to be different. Peng Doran's attack was not as ferocious as before, and although it was strenuous for Xiang Laozu to deal with it, he still firmly blocked the gap in the end. However, Peng Doran's attack was gradually increasing, and Laozu's situation was not too good. He could be pushed back by Peng Doran at any time. But at this time, Lu Ping had already rushed forward. Longhua ancestor did not join hands with Lu Ping to help Laozu. Lu Ping did not have time to think about the reason behind this. Wherever the flying sword pointed, the lightning had already descended before the sword chi. Even Peng Doran had to pay attention to this human cultivator, who had also cultivated the 8 realms at the same time as him. However, it was also because of Lu Ping's attack that Peng Doran temporarily stopped his attack on Xiang Laozu, which made him realize that Xiang Laozu was currently using the Sea of Origin energy, obtained from refining the 5 elements Spirit Light Fan in the Good Fortune Cauldron, to concentrate on condensing a single attribute origin energy. Xiang Laozu actually wanted to give up on cultivating the 5 realms at the same time, and try to advance to the 2nd realm of the true spirit realm first. No wonder. Chapter 1586. The Longhua ancestors' moment of hesitation allowed Lu Ping to quickly find the answer. Xiang Laozu had actually given up on cultivating the 5 realms at the same time at an unknown price, and used the source chi refined by the Good Fortune Cauldron to quickly condense the 9 source chi seeds of a divine ability, and raise his cultivation to the 2nd true spirit realm in one go. 2nd true spirit realm. As a result, it would be very difficult for Xiang Laozu to raise his cultivation in the future, especially when he opened the Thunder Source in the 8th True Spirit Realm and opened the Primal Chaos Realm in the 9th True Spirit Realm. This kind of regular cultivation could even announce his failure in facing these bottlenecks in advance, because it was almost impossible for a cultivator to accumulate enough resources to break through these two obstacles on the path to immortality. Otherwise, why would the 7th Patriarch have hidden himself after finding this world? He wanted to borrow the source chi of this world to break through the cultivation bottleneck that they had no hope of reaching. However, he had unexpectedly perished together in the great formation that connected this world to the outside world, leaving only Peng Daoren to struggle at death's door. Just as his plan of tens of thousands of years was about to succeed, the 18 true spirits of this world had joined hands to disrupt it. This was also the reason why Lu Ping and the others had always been at a disadvantage against Peng Daoren. But the 4 cultivators in the peak of the 1st True Spirit Realm, including the Butterfly Fairy, had never broken through to the 2nd True Spirit Realm by themselves. Everyone charged into the Great Formation because they yearned for the path to immortality. If they gave up their hopes of immortality just to break through the formation, they might as well just die in Peng Daoren's hands. They would die sooner or later anyway. They were all monsters that had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years, so if they gave up on the path to immortality, life and death were nothing to them. In other words, Xiang Laozu breaking through to the 2nd True Spirit Realm with all his strength was a matter of harming himself and benefiting others. Once Xiang Laozu broke through to the 2nd True Spirit Realm, the possibility of the 3 of them working together to defeat Peng Daoren would undoubtedly be higher. Lu Ping and Long Huai should be secretly rejoicing. However, after defeating Peng Daoren, how could Xiang Laozu be so kind as to sacrifice himself for the 2 of them? How could he be willing to let the 2 of them leave this world while his hopes of immortality were shattered? What was he planning? Looking at the current Peng Daoren and thinking of Peng Daoren's several tens of thousands of years of planning, how could the Longhuai ancestor not have any hesitation in his heart? It was this instant of hesitation that caused the Longhuai ancestor to be unable to help but slow down. Lu Ping, who quickly understood, also had a trace of understanding in his heart. Could it be that Xiang Laozu had set his sights on Peng Daoren, and that he wanted to walk down the same path as Peng Daoren? However, during these 30,000 years, Peng Daoren had no choice but to do so. Xiang Laozu had not reached such a state yet, so how could he make such a decision? Unless Peng Daoren still had a contingency plan in the passage formation that Xiang Laozu already knew about. Moreover, Xiang Laozu still knew how to inherit these contingency plans. Only like this would Xiang Laozu be willing to give up on cultivating all 5 realms at the same time and obtain the foundation that Laozu had accumulated for several tens of thousands of years. It would be much easier and faster than Xiang Laozu cultivating all 5 realms at the same time. Fellow cultivators, please help the old man. Once the old man reaches the 2nd True Spirit Realm, we will be able to kill this heaven-splitting bandit if we work together. Although Xiang Laozu and Lu Ping had worked together to block Peng Daoren's attack, the source energy he had just condensed had been scattered, and he had missed the chance to condense his source energy. Xiang Laozu couldn't help feeling anxious, and he knew that his attempt to raise his cultivation to the 2nd True Spirit Realm had raised the suspicions of the Longhuai ancestor. He immediately loudly begged the Longhuai ancestor to help him. The most important thing right now is to kill this heaven-splitting bandit, otherwise he will lose his path to immortality. It will be useless no matter how much you and I plan. Longhuai ancestor, quickly help me. From discovering Xiang Laozu's plan to Xiang Laozu asking for help, only a split second had passed. The Longhuai ancestor seemed to have suppressed the suspicions in his heart and worked together with Lu Ping to attack Peng Daoren, giving Laozu more time to increase his cultivation. Daoist Peng himself was suppressed by the formation formed by the 9 treasured tree. Coupled with the joint attack of the 3 people, he fell into a disadvantageous position for the first time. However, it was far from enough to completely defeat Daoist Peng in a short period of time, unless there was an external force intervening. However, after Butterfly Fairy had gathered all her strength for an all-out attack, The blood-thinning needle was destroyed by Taoist Peng. Butterfly Fairy was still on the verge of death after suffering the backlash and could no longer fight back. As for the other stubbornly living Xiaobai, his source energy had already been injured by Peng Daoren. If it wasn't for the pills refined by Lu Ping, Xiaobai's Peng Law would have already been destroyed. Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor looked at each other, as if they understood each other's thoughts. The two of them suddenly erupted with their full strength, taking over the pressure on Xiang Laozu and helping Laozu break through the second true spirit realm. Xiang Laozu might have some selfish calculations, but right now Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor only wanted to leave this world's bindings. As long as they defeated Peng Daoren, the last obstacle, they just needed to leave this world before Laozu's plan was successful. Not to mention that with Xiang Laozu's second true spirit realm cultivation, he couldn't stop the Longhuai ancestor and Lu Ping working together. Hey, truly worthy of being the descendant of a turtle, holding back at the critical moment. What a good fellow Taoist. Although Taoist Peng had fallen into a disadvantageous position, his tone was still calm and composed. Although his words couldn't be more obvious to instigate, it was often the most difficult to judge in a moment of life and death. Two fellow Taoists don't understand this bandit's provocation. If the old man doesn't enter the second true spirit realm, do the two of you have any other method to suppress this heaven-splitting bandit? Xiang Laozu retorted while quickly absorbing the source qi in the good fortune cauldron. While he was speaking, another divine ability seed was condensed. This time, Elder Ancestor Xiang was trying to break through the wood elemental source technique. Previously, when he was cultivating the 5 realms, he had already condensed 4 source techniques. After using the creation cauldron to refine the 5-element spirit light fan and absorb the source qi, he condensed another 3 source techniques in a short period of time. He was only left with 2 wood elemental source techniques to reach the great perfection of the second true spirit realm. Taoist Peng continued unhurriedly. Back then, I fell into that tortoise's trap at the final moment of my great victory. I was almost forced to hand over everything in this world to someone else. In the end, I had no choice but to abandon my physical body and rely on this world's essence to survive. Now I've planned for over 30,000 years, but you little rascals have ruined my plans. I do indeed have a backup plan, but since I've already lost all hope of immortality, I might as well have you all stay behind and accompany me in death. Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor secretly thought this was bad. They quickly retreated to protect themselves, but they suddenly saw Peng Daoren's body begin to twist and change until a bloody rock appeared in front of them, letting out a mournful cry. Chapter 1587. Peng Daoren forcefully transformed his reconstructed body into a true spirit body. The dripping blood turned his true spirit body into a blood rock, but Peng Daoren's self-mutilation method caused his strength to increase greatly in an instant. The majestic aura caused Lu Ping and the other two to pale in shock. Xiang Laozu screamed out, "You are simply seeking your own death. Forcefully transforming your flesh and blood body like this. Even if your body is condensed from the life fiend qi, it will still be heavily injured. Even if you can temporarily increase your strength, so what?" Saying this, Xiang Laozu turned to look at Lu Ping and Longhuai ancestor, and said in a loud voice, "Fellow cultivators, this person's secret technique has a great hidden danger. We only need to defend ourselves, and once the secret technique's effect is over, our strength will drop greatly. At that time, this person will die." The blood rock proudly flew through the air. Its soaring aura seemed like it was going to overturn Longhuai ancestor's 9 branches treasure tree as it flapped its wings. "This sovereign has lived for tens of thousands of years. Now that I have no hope of living forever, I'll drag you minor repairs down with me to vent my anger. What can you do to this sovereign?" The blood rock's cold eyes looked at Xiang Laozu, who had suddenly become anxious. His eyes were filled with mockery as he said, "Originally, this sovereign didn't dare be certain and didn't believe it. But now that you've raised your cultivation to the second true spirit realm, this sovereign no longer has any doubts." The exasperated look on Patriarch Xiang's face suddenly vanished, and he looked as calm as he could be. However, He ignored Shui Ping's words and suddenly intensified his attacks. He cast a series of skills one after another, each with different elemental attributes. The degree to which the skills changed from one to another was no weaker than Taoist Peng's. Not only that, the power of the skills also increased by a level. Lu Ping and Patriarch Long Huai's faces were instantly filled with disbelief. Only Taoist Peng's true spirit, Shui Peng, remained unfazed, as if he had expected this. He didn't seem surprised at all. Fellow Taoists don't hesitate. This person is trying to buy time, so he can use his follow-up attacks. Don't be bewitched by his words. Earlier, Xiang Laozu was still loudly saying that they could win as long as they bought time. Yet now he suddenly called out to Lu Ping and Long Huai to speed up their attacks. With such a contradiction, even if Lu Ping and Long Huai were slow, they would still be able to sense that there was definitely a great secret behind all of this. As expected, Peng Daran said leisurely, that four-legged serpent had cultivation all those years ago, but in the end, it was still used by you as a spear. Even if it left something behind, it would only become a wood serpent that I don't know. It obtained some specious inherited memories, so it anxiously called out a group of people to come and die. Peng Doran's words caused the expression of the Longhuai ancestor to become extremely gloomy. He simply turned the heaven and earth wine cauldron upside down, and every single bit of quintessence qi that was gathered within it was completely absorbed by the 9 branches treasured tree. The branches that hung down from the enormous tree became even fiercer, and every single one of them flickered with quintessence qi when they lashed out, and they contained the might of at least one quintessence divine ability. The blood rock swept a glance at the Longhuai ancestor, and its eyes were filled with disdain. The blood rock flapped its wings, and all the branches that swept towards them from all directions were completely severed by the invisible power of space. The Longhuai ancestor cried out in alarm, and when Lu Ping fixed his gaze on it, he saw that 3 of the 6 branches on the treasured tree that represented the simultaneous cultivation of all 6 realms by the Longhuai ancestor had been damaged, and the 3 quintessence divine ability seeds were directly shattered by the blood rock's wings. Looking at Patriarch Long Huai's ashen face that was tinged with fear, Lu Ping also sucked in a breath of cold air. He couldn't believe that Taoist Peng, who had transformed into the true spirit blood rock, could be said to have been destroyed so easily. The grand formation Patriarch Long Huai had set up with his natal spirit treasure could only exist in name. It could no longer trap Taoist Peng in his true spirit blood rock state. At this time, Peng Daran obviously no longer cared about the formation in front of him, but focused all his attention on Xiang Laozu. Among the 7 of us, I was the strongest, and the 4-legged snake was the proudest. But who would have thought that the kindest turtle was the most cunning? He actually endured until the very last moment, and almost made all my plans come to nothing. In the end, I had no choice but to be imprisoned for 30,000 years. At the very last moment, when the turtle directly knocked the cauldron of creation into this world, I had my suspicions. However, 30,000 years had passed, and without the nourishment of this world's congenital origin, even if the turtle could seize another body and be reborn, given his lifespan, he should have been turned into ashes long ago. But I never expected that I would still miscalculate. When he spoke up to hear, Peng Daran suddenly shouted in a loud voice, "Do you think all my speculations are correct, Taoist Gui, Xiang Yuanqing?" When Peng Daran's words entered the ears of Lu Ping and Long Huai, their expressions changed again and again. When Peng Daran shouted, Lu Ping and Long Huai's hearts shook violently, and for a moment, they even forgot to use their quintessence divine abilities to continue besieging the true blood rock that Peng Daran had transformed into. Not good. Xiang Laozu's expression changed abruptly, and he suddenly broke away from the battle and retreated swiftly. The mouth of the cauldron of creation suddenly opened, and a strand of heaven and earth energy that was resolutely different from any quintessence divine light descended from the cauldron of creation and firmly protected Xiang Laozu. At the same time, he shouted at Lu Ping and Long Huai in a stern voice, "Idiots! This person is already an arrow at the end of its flight, yet the 2 of you were actually deceived by his words." However, Peng Daran laughed loudly, Seizing the instant when Lu Ping and Long Huai let their guard down, the True Blood Rock's entire body glowed with a bloody light, and its true form soared into the sky. By the time Lu Ping and Long Huai reacted and wanted to make a move, it was already too late. Peng Daoren had already broken through the shackles of the numinous treasure tree in one go. After breaking free from the shackles of the grand formation formed by the Long Huai ancestors' natal spirit treasure, Peng Daoren no longer tried to hide or flee. Instead, he was still surrounded by the three of them. However, at this moment, the True Blood Rock was really an arrow at the end of its flight, just as Xiang Laozu had said. The bloody light all over its body was dispersing from its true form, and the baleful aura formed by the baleful aura of life was suffusing the entire passageway. "You're not going to flee?" A bewildered expression flashed on Xiang Laozu's face, and then a lofty bearing had suddenly appeared on Laozu. At this moment, his cultivation was still at the first true spirit realm, but he seemed to possess a might that could rival Peng Daoren. The enormous True Blood Rock's true form was shrinking while the flesh and bones throughout its body wriggled, and its true form slowly returned to its previous state. Peng Daoren laughed coldly and said, "Why should I flee?" Xiang Laozu's cold expression didn't reveal a trace of emotion as he said, "You won't be able to escape." Peng Daoren didn't mind at all, and he chuckled instead. "You really are that cowardly tortoise." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his gaze to look at the cauldron of creation above Laozu's head, as if he was examining it, and he said, "I never expected that you would possess such ability. This cauldron was actually able to protect a trace of your true form for tens of thousands of years, and I never imagined that you would actually be able to seize the body of a true spirit descendant after tens of thousands of years." Chapter 1588. Suddenly seeing the ancestral divine artifact appear in the Five Elements Tortoise Vault, no one would be able to avoid being careless in their ecstasy. Not to mention, who would have thought that this cauldron would contain a divine light that has not been extinguished for 30,000 years? Who would have thought that our own Laozu clan would set up a trap in the ancestral divine artifact to trap our own descendants? Xiang Laozu's expression was solemn as he spoke with confidence and assurance, but his words made Lu Ping and Long Huai shiver. He really was Taoist Gui. Peng Daoren's face was pale, but when he heard what Laozu said, he nodded with a smile and said, "As expected of Taoist Gui, you are just as vicious and merciless as you were back then." Taoist Gui snorted coldly, and his aura skyrocketed. The 5 origin patterns on his tortoise shell lit up one by one. Among the 5 lit origin patterns, only the water origin pattern was brighter than the other 4. This meant that Taoist Gui, like Lu Ping, had also reached the peak true spirit realm in the water origin. This also meant that Taoist Gui had reached the peak true spirit realm, first true spirit realm. However, at this moment, the veins kept swimming and converging, and a steady stream of essence was transformed and condensed on the shell. The number of wood veins kept increasing, and the azure light grew brighter and brighter. Finally, the true spirit of Ba Gui threw its head back and roared at the sky. A soundless ripple spread out from Taoist Gui. Ba Gui's aura became even stronger, and he had reached the perfection realm of the true spirit realm in one fell swoop. At the same time, Taoist Gui's cultivation base had reached the perfection realm of the true spirit realm. Lu Ping and Long Huai's expressions had changed since a long time ago. At this moment, the changes in the grand formation had clearly far exceeded the scope of their imagination. 2 of the 7 heaven-splitting ancestors had actually survived, and one of them had been by their side since a long time ago. This was especially so for the Long Huai ancestor, as the one who initiated the attack on the portal, and the one who was publicly acknowledged as the strongest. He suddenly realized that he had only worked for someone else in the end. Thinking back to his high-spirited attitude earlier, he suddenly felt like a clown. Only Peng Daoren remained unmoved at this moment, as if the changes that happened to Xiang Laozu were already within his expectations. Even though Xiang Laozu, who had been possessed by Taoist Gui, had pushed his cultivation all the way to the peak of the second realm of the true spirit realm, suppressing him in both cultivation and strength, Peng Daoren remained unmoved. "Get out of the way." A deep voice came from the mouth of the former Xiang Laozu, who was now Taoist Turtle. You should know that you are no match for me now, and I don't want to kill you now. Peng Daoren looked at Taoist Turtle in amusement and said, What if I don't get out of the way? Are you sure you can kill me? Taoist Turtle's cold eyes swept across the crowd. At this moment, one of his eyes was water blue, the other dark green. Lu Ping and Long Huai subconsciously stood together. The current situation had long gone beyond their understanding, and the only thing they could do was to join hands and fight, for a slim chance of survival. However, Taoist Gui clearly didn't take the two of them seriously. Instead, he stared at Taoist Peng and said, You and I have each schemed for tens of thousands of years. You don't know this noble one, but this noble one has clearly seen through your methods. Now you should know that you are no match for this noble one. So why seek your own death? As long as you get out of the way, I promise to spare your life. Aha! Peng Daoren sneered as if he had heard the funniest thing in the world. Spare my life? How arrogant. You think you can do that? Taoist Turtle, however, showed a rare solemn expression as he said, Back then, the 7 of us were as close as brothers, and we worked together to open up this world. I really don't want the last bit of affection between us to go to waste. A look of nostalgia flashed across Peng Daoren's face, as if he was also immersed in the past, when the 7th patriarch worked together to open up this world. But just as Taoist Peng was in a trance, Taoist Gui suddenly made a move. He clenched his fists, and 2 streams of source qi, one dark blue, the other pale green, flowed from his arms to his hands, and the 2 divine ability seeds fused between his hands to form a blue pearl with a green hue. At this time, Lu Ping could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in the pearl, which was completely condensed from the power of water and the power of wood. Obviously, the power of these 2 magical powers was not simply the power of 2 magical powers added together. Instead, it was a qualitative change from the fusion of 2 magical powers, a fighting method that could only be mastered after reaching the 2nd realm of the true spirit realm. The moment this pearl was formed, it pierced through the void, and the moment it reappeared, it was smashing straight at Peng Daoren's head. A trick from 30,000 years ago. So many years have passed. Don't you have any other amazing tricks? Peng Daoren, who had been immersed in the memories of the past, was no longer confused. Before the pearl, which had merged 2 magical powers, fell on his head, Peng Daoren had already disappeared. Hey, don't forget 30,000 years ago. This was the trick that finally destroyed your physical body. It didn't seem to surprise Taoist Gui that his attack failed. The moment the pearl, condensed from his original power, missed its target, it disappeared into the void once again, while Taoist Gui's true spirit Ba Gui had already charged towards where Taoist Peng reappeared with an overwhelming force. Wherever Taoist Gui's true spirit passed, the space was almost compressed, and Taoist Gui's mighty aura made Taoist Peng lose his previous indifference. On the contrary, his face turned even more ferocious. Are you still going to resist? It's no use, Taoist Gui said in a loud voice, but he didn't slack off in the slightest. 30,000 years ago, I was able to fight you to a draw when I was at the 5th level of the true spirit realm. Now that your cultivation is lower than mine, what else can you do to fight me? Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, Taoist Peng suddenly started roaring with laughter, and his laughter contained ridicule and pleasure. It was even to the extent that he utterly didn't notice the pearl formed from the fusion of quintessence divine abilities that had suddenly appeared behind him. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Taoist Turtle's face, but more than that, he was happy that he was about to gain something. Peng Daoren looked at Taoist Turtle with a scornful look. Taoist Turtle's heart skipped a beat for no reason, but then he saw Peng Daoren's feet melt. Taoist Turtle seemed to realize something in an instant, and said in shock, You! Peng Daoren threw his head back and laughed. He was still standing straight, but his feet were melting faster and faster. Wisps of black smoke rose from Peng Daoren's legs, and then disappeared into the void. From a distance, Peng Daoren seemed to be disappearing into the void from the bottom up. The divine pearl silently flew towards Taoist Peng from behind, but all of a sudden, A dense cloud of mysterious aura of an unknown color rose from the space where Taoist Peng was standing. The moment the divine pearl sank into the cloud of mysterious aura, it disappeared without a trace, while Taoist Peng was still looking at Taoist Gui, who had transformed into the true spirit of tyrannical turtle, as if nothing had happened. However, when the cloud of mysterious aura rose, Taoist Peng's body melted even faster. Khanate. Chapter 1589. The pearl, which had successfully fused two divine powers with different natures, did not cause even the slightest ripple when it sank into the dense cloud of qi. Priest Gui's face turned pale with fright, and as if he suddenly thought of something, he cried out in alarm, "The innate original power!" Peng Daoren seemed not to notice the melting of his body at all. Hearing Priest Gui's words, he just sneered and said, "You still remember the innate original power? You're crazy. You're crazy. How can you trigger the innate original power? How can you do this? You traced the source of all living beings with your body and melted the net of origin of this world. You're courting death. Are you really going to be doomed eternally?" Priest Gui's enormous true form, dominating turtle, came to an abrupt halt in midair. The dense cloud of qi rising from under Peng Daoren's body did not move forward, so he could only curse loudly. For a moment, his incoherent speech seemed to make Peng Daoren feel even better. The louder Priest Gui cursed, the louder Peng Daoren's laughter became. Priest Gui was exasperated. How much effort did we spend to open up this world? And how much effort did we spend to awaken the intelligence of the living beings in this world? Do you really have the heart to return this world to chaos? It's too late, too late. The net of origin has been completely destroyed by those living beings, and the innate original power has gone out of control. Taoist Peng said loudly, "What's the point of saying all this now? The living beings of this world were nothing more than tools that we used to steal our innate essence from the very beginning. Why do you, Xiang Yuanqing, have to pretend to be compassionate towards the state of the universe? You're just annoying us for nothing." Peng Daoren continued, 30,000 years ago, the seven of us discovered this world. Overjoyed, we decided to join hands to awaken the intelligence of the living beings in this world and pass down our teachings to each other, in order to nurture the innate original power of this world. Unfortunately, this world has limited resources, and the innate original power is only enough for one person to use. I am the strongest one here, and I am about to advance to the 8th level of the true spirit realm. Once I am nourished by the innate original power of this world, the innate original power of my spirit will return to chaos, and there will be no more obstacles for me to advance to the 9th level of the true spirit realm. In the future, I can use the innate original power of chaos to nurture my own innate original power, and I will have a 60% chance of reaching the supreme God realm. Peng Daoren paused, then said fiercely, "When we first opened up this world, we made an agreement that if the innate original power of this world was not enough, the strongest one would be the first to make a breakthrough. In the future, when this person achieves immortality, he would have to return and help the other 6. Xiang Yuanqing, do you still remember this oath?" Taoist Gui snorted coldly and said, "I only remember that you were the first one to attack Old Ape in this passage formation." Peng Daoren laughed and said, "Do you think I am as conceited as the four-legged snake? You, Old Ape, Tigress, and the others secretly plotted to kill me and steal my innate original power, while I was refining the innate original power. Do you really think I don't know? I just wanted to gain the upper hand by striking first. Unfortunately, even so, I still let a trace of your true spirit escape, which led to today's disaster. It's a pity that Lady Chan blocked a sword strike from the four-legged snake to save me. In the end, she was killed by that fire luan, and I couldn't save her in time." Peng Daoren's body had melted down to his thighs. The space of the passage formation was collapsing, and the net of original power that covered this world was collapsing under the corrosion of the dense evil spirit transformed from his body. Wisps of dense qi seeped out of the broken net of original power, then gathered into a ball, and rose from under Peng Daoren's body. Taoist Gui, who was at the 2nd level of the true spirit realm, tried to break Peng Daoren's fused net of original power, several times with his original power. But all of them fell into the dense qi and became like clay oxen in the sea. Do you think I have completely fallen into your trap? When I tried to cultivate 7 realms at the same time and failed, I discovered your existence. From then on, I knew that the plan I had been working on for tens of thousands of years would become a reflection in the water. But what I couldn't get, did you think you could? Not only can't you get it, no one else can get it either. Let's all just die together. There was a hint of madness in Peng Doran's eyes. His body melted even faster, and his lower body had completely turned into evil spirit. The dense evil spirit condensed into liquid-like balls that melted the space, and then slowly melted the net of original power attached to the passage space, releasing all the innate chi of original power that this world had accumulated for tens of thousands of years since it was created. Taoist Gui attacked several times, but to no avail. He turned around and cursed at Lu Ping and Long Huai. You two idiots! Once the net of original power of this world is completely destroyed, the innate chi of original power will seep out, and this world will definitely return to chaos. Everyone will die. Lu Ping and Long Huai were horrified. Earlier, the two of them had been greatly hesitant, but when the two creators of the heavens, Laozu, appeared, the situation had far exceeded their expectations. The entanglement between the heavens, the seventh patriarch, forced them to stay as far away as possible and observe the situation. However, the two of them had no choice but to take action now. Peng Doran clearly wanted to drag this world down with him, so for the sake of survival, Lu Ping and Long Huai could only fight with Taoist Gui again. As soon as the pure yang flying sword appeared, 129,600 sword lights attached themselves to the flying sword itself, gradually forming a gigantic sword that reached into the sky. Then, with an earth-shattering momentum, it chopped down at Taoist Peng's head. Long Huai ancestor seemed to be more aware of the seriousness of the situation than Lu Ping. His spirit treasure was damaged when Peng Doran broke out of the encirclement, but this time, he restored his true spirit. A 9,900 feet long, dark green-wood serpent hovered above his spirit treasure, the 9-branched tree. A single horn, which looked like a withered twig, pierced through the void, trying to help Taoist Gui interrupt the melting process of Peng Doran's body. It's useless, it's useless. Everything in this world will return to the primal chaos. The look on Peng Doran's face grew more and more hysterical. His body from his chest down had already turned into a pitch-black evil spirit, but his arms were still waving fanatically as he spoke, which was a chilling sight to behold. Before the sword light reached Peng Doran's head, countless sword lights fell off, eroded by the innate original energy. For a moment, from a distance, the enormous sword light looked like a piece of scrap metal, full of cracks. If Lu Ping had not taken the pure yang flying sword back in time, the sword might have been damaged as well. Meanwhile, Taoist Gui's enormous true form, dominating turtle, was forced back by the surging original energy. Long Huai ancestors would flood dragon true spirit was going to attack Taoist Gui, while he was resisting the original energy head-on. But Taoist Gui's decisive retreat nearly allowed Long Huai ancestors' true spirit to dash into the original energy. However, although Taoist Gui was forced back step by the original energy, the cauldron of fortune hovering above his head had been trying to contact the original energy that had gone out of control, trying to draw a wisp of it into the cauldron. Of course, Taoist Gui's behavior did not escape Peng Doran's eyes. Peng Doran, who now only had his head, shoulders, and arms left, laughed aloud. Why do you have to waste so much energy? You should know that once the original energy of this world goes out of control, with your current strength, you will be completely helpless. If you are bound by the net of original energy, you can slowly absorb and refine the original energy through the net of original energy. With the help of the cauldron of fortune, you can use the original energy far better than I can. However, I have released all the original energy of this world. Unless you have reached the peak of the chaotic realm, the 9th level of the true spirit realm, even if you are at your peak, you will be turned into ashes in the face of such a tremendous original energy. Chapter 1590. The net of original power had been broken, and the last obstacle for them to leave this world was gone. However, the natural original power accumulated in this world, since it was created, began to spread to the entire tunnel formation, becoming another obstacle for Lu Ping and the others to leave this world. Peng Daoren, with only his last head left, laughed wildly and shouted, "I'll go first. Don't struggle too much, just follow me. You won't die so easily even if you want to," growled Taoist Gui. The cauldron of fortune rotated rapidly. Strands of origin energy drifted out from the mouth of the cauldron, forming a shield of 5 elements origin energy around the cauldron. At the same time, the cauldron of fortune continued to rush towards the spreading innate origin energy. Although the shield formed by the 5 elements origin energy was constantly being worn down by the innate origin energy, the innate origin energy was unable to do anything to the cauldron of fortune for a while, because of the endless supply of innate origin energy from the cauldron of fortune. In order to kill Peng Daoren before Peng Daoren perished, Taoist Gui consumed a great amount of original power of 5 elements to fight against the original power of 5 elements. Just as Peng Daoren's last head was about to be smashed by the cauldron, the head suddenly flew up into the air. Laughing aloud, Peng Daoren said, "I won't live for long, but I can't die in the hands of a coward like you." The original power of 5 elements drifting in the cauldron was no longer enough to support the consumption of the original power of 5 elements. Taoist Gui hurriedly called the cauldron back, then laughed aloud. "As I expected, you're the most afraid of death, you mongrel bird. You haven't seen through life and death in 30,000 years, but you've taken life and death more seriously. How could you make up your mind to kill yourself? But I didn't expect that you, a mongrel bird, would actually try to imitate what I did in the past. You abandoned your body and escaped with a wisp of your soul. I almost fell into your trap." Having been seen through by Taoist Gui, Taoist Peng snorted coldly. Although he only had his head left, he abruptly spat out a bolt of lightning from his mouth, which transformed into a net of lightning and wrapped his head up. Next, 7 streams of original power flowed out from the mouth, ears, nose and eyes of this head, slowly merging into the net of lightning. Although it was extremely difficult for Taoist Gui to fuse 8 streams of original power together, it managed to fend off the corrosion of the original power for a while. The result was many times better than when Taoist Gui fought against the original power of natural power, with the original power of 5 elements. After Peng Daoren protected the remaining head with the 8 original powers, a sonorous cry came from within. The 8 original powers surrounding Peng Daoren's head kept changing shapes, and gradually, they formed the shape of a rock. Then, the rock flapped its wings, intending to break free from the original power of 5 elements and leave. "Don't let him escape," Taoist Gui roared. The cauldron above his head spun faster and faster, but suddenly, Taoist Gui patted the cauldron. The lid of the cauldron suddenly opened, and Taoist Gui leaped into the cauldron. Then, disregarding the consumption of his own original power, he also rushed into the original power of 5 elements and chased after Peng Daoren. To his surprise, the rock did not flee. Instead, it circled in the air and charged straight at Taoist Gui. Protected by the cauldron, Taoist Gui was naturally not afraid, but he instinctively sensed that something was wrong. If this was really Peng Daoren, he would definitely not turn around and fight him head-on at this moment, as his body was mostly injured. The first thing that came to Taoist Gui's mind was that this was a bait set by Peng Daoren, who must be hiding in another part of the void, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Therefore, Taoist Gui immediately spread out his divine sense, trying to find traces of Peng Daoren. As for the rock, which was charging straight at him, Taoist Gui didn't take it seriously. With the cauldron protecting him, he was confident that the rock could not hurt him. However, Taoist Gui didn't find any trace of Peng Daoren in the surrounding void, and the natural original power of 5 elements was a great hindrance to Taoist Gui's divine sense. But the rock had already crashed into him. When Taoist Gui was about to stop it, the rock suddenly sped up. Taoist Gui cursed inwardly and struck the rock with several divine abilities, directly shattering the rock condensed from the essence of 8 different kinds of sources of energy. Ha 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 ha. The moment the rock exploded, Daoist Peng's remaining head had already dodged Daoist Gui's interception and smashed towards the cauldron of fortune with it. Peng Daoren didn't dodge. His remaining body had been inside the rock, and to everyone's surprise, Peng Daoren didn't try his best to save his remaining body. Instead, he laughed wildly and crashed into the cauldron. Taoist Gui's expression changed dramatically. By the time he tried to dodge, it was already too late. His head smashed into the cauldron, then melted into a puddle of pitch-black liquid, which corroded the cauldron and made sizzling noises. However, Taoist Gui had no time to care about the damage to the cauldron. Instead, he hurriedly closed the lid of the cauldron and completely sealed himself inside. However, the cauldron itself was shaped like a teapot. Apart from the lid, there was also a spout that led straight into the cauldron. That puddle of liquid was tightly attached to the walls of the cauldron. Then, as if it had a mind of its own, it rolled into the cauldron through the spout. Taoist Gui's shout came from the cauldron. Next, the lid of the cauldron was thrown up, and Taoist Gui transformed into a beam of light and flew out of the cauldron, rushing straight out of the range of natural original power. Then, a series of creaking noises could be heard, as the cauldron began to crack from the inside to the outside. Then, with a loud explosion, the entire cauldron was shattered into pieces. The cauldron of good fortune contained a rich amount of spiritual essence. The moment the cauldron of good fortune collapsed, the spiritual essence exploded outwards. The density of the spiritual essence in the entire passage formation clearly increased greatly. Along with the spiritual essence, a black rain of life aura also erupted from the cauldron of good fortune. Rays of spiritual light peeled off from the raindrops formed from the baleful life energy and condensed together to form a soaring peng. This was Daoist Peng's true spirit body. Without the cauldron, no matter how hard you try to run, you won't be able to keep a trace of your true spirit. This time, you won't be able to escape. The rock's voice was exactly the same as Peng Daoren's. Taoist Gui's face was as dark as it could be. At least, I still have a physical body to possess, he said fiercely. But now, you've lost your physical body, and your net of original power has been destroyed. Even if you want to merge with the original power of this world, you won't be able to escape either. A weird smile flashed across Peng Daoren's face, which was entirely condensed from original power. As he flapped his wings, bolts of original power flashed across them. Then Peng Daoren's true spirit once again broke into the spreading original power. Taoist Gui pondered briefly, then abruptly raised his head. A hint of hesitation flashed across his face, but at last, he deployed over 10 protective magics around him in a row. At the cost of a great deal of his true spirit, he was about to plunge into the original power. However, no sooner had the light under Taoist Gui's feet flashed, Peng Daoren's exclamation suddenly came from the original power. Taoist Gui paused, then saw a series of bolts of lightning stir up the original power like boiling water. Next he heard Peng Daoren yell, "Impossible!" Immediately, Taoist Gui saw Peng Daoren, who had entered the original power, fly back at an even faster speed. To be exact, he was thrown back. Taoist Gui's expression immediately became uncertain. Then Taoist Peng, who was sent flying back, suddenly had a look of panic in his eyes. Ignoring the fact that his true spirit body was severely injured, Taoist Gui roared harshly, "Impossible! How can you absorb the innate original power for your own use? How can you activate the original power of chaos and cultivate in all 9 states at the same time? Unless your true spirit has been nurtured with divinity, but that's impossible. Who are you? Could it be that you are a bloodline descendant favored by some deity?" Chapter 1591. Ever since Peng Daoren activated the innate original power of this world at the cost of his rebuilt body, Taoist Gui and Long Huai had fallen into a state of panic. Taoist Gui still had the cauldron of fortune to protect himself, while Long Huai could only try to resist the erosion of the innate original power with his own internal energy. However, what no one knew was that the moment the innate original power spread out, not only did Lu Ping not feel the slightest fear, on the contrary, A kind of instinctive intimacy had been inciting Lu Ping to eagerly throw himself into the innate original power. The moment the innate original power appeared, the dragon of the true spirit in Lu Ping's core space abruptly darted out of the sea of origin. If it were not for the fact that Lu Ping had absolute control over it, this dragon of the true spirit would have darted straight out of the core space. At this time, Long Huai had already transformed into a 9,900 feet tall true spirit of the wood flood dragon, attempting to cooperate with Taoist Gui to interrupt Peng Doran's destruction of the net of origin. At the same time, Lu Ping summoned a sky-reaching sword light with his pure yang flying sword, slashing towards Peng Doran, who was enveloped in the innate original power. As the sword light fell, the internal energy was greedily melted by the innate original power, and the sword light attached to the sky-reaching sword was eroded. At this moment, Lu Ping also came into direct contact with the innate original power. The Battle of the North Sea is related to the innate. At this moment, many of Lu Ping's previous speculations were finally confirmed. After so many twists and turns, the secret of the beginning of the world was finally revealed to Lu Ping. Everything was just the selfishness of the seventh patriarch. The seventh patriarch, who was revered by the entire cultivation world as an ancestor, only regarded the cultivation world as a tool for them to seek immortality, which they could abandon without hesitation at any time because of their own selfishness. The so-called disappearance of the seventh patriarch was not because he left this world, but because he fought for the innate original power of this world. In the end, only two of them were left, struggling at death's door in different ways. Before this, because of the appearance of the Longhuai ancestor, the high-level cultivators in this world had many speculations about the secret of the seventh patriarch, which was close to the truth. However, before the real answer was confirmed by the parties involved, the creatures in this world would more or less revere them. At this moment, however, the unscrupulous conversation between Peng Doran and Taoist Gui had completely erased this revere from Lu Ping's heart. The glorious image of the seventh patriarch collapsed with a bang, leaving only a group of hateful faces. Lu Ping had only come into direct contact with the innate original energy for a moment, but in this short period of time, the innate original energy had rapidly consumed the energy in Lu Ping's body. More precisely, the innate original energy could assimilate everything in Lu Ping's body, including his physical body. At this moment, Lu Ping imitated Peng Doran's method and fused the 8 original energies in his body together. With the origin of thunder as the lead, he erected a shield inside his body, and at the same time, kept the strand of innate original energy out of the shield. The shield could not keep the innate original energy from being corroded by the innate original energy. All it could do was slow down the speed at which the innate original energy assimilated the innate original energy. However, the moment the innate original energy came into contact with the innate original energy, a strand of innate original energy was seized by the dragon of the true spirit in the core space. A heart-wrenching pain spread through his entire body, but Lu Ping did his best to not show the slightest expression on his face. The core space was now filled with monstrous waves. The petals of the white jade lotus were flying everywhere, and the multicolored gentian beads were flying everywhere. The innate original energy sea was completely boiling, and the dragon of the true spirit seemed to be adding fuel to the fire. There was also a purple skin gourd that was spitting lightning everywhere. At this moment, Lu Ping completely ignored the chaos in the core space. Instead, he focused all of his attention on the pure yang bead that hung high above the core space. As long as the pure yang bead kept the entire core space under control, no matter how strong the innate original energy that invaded the core space was, it would always be under Lu Ping's control. He could expel it from his body at any time, and it would not cause too serious damage to Lu Ping's original energy. On the other side, Long Huai was in a much more miserable state. Facing the erosion of the innate original energy, Long Huai also tried to fuse the 6 original energies he had activated to slow down the erosion. At the same time, he tried to imitate Taoist Gui and throw himself into the broken cosmos wine cauldron in his hand. Unfortunately, after the fusion of Longhuai ancestors' original energies, He was far from being comparable to Lu Ping and Peng Daoren. Especially because he lacked the original energy of thunder, Longhuai ancestors' resistance to the innate original energy was far inferior to Lu Ping's. Although the Cosmos Wine Cauldron claimed to be able to control all the spirit veins in the world, it was powerless against the innate original energy. Coupled with the fact that this heaven-opening artifact had been continuously damaged, it was no longer comparable to the Cauldron of Fortune. Using it to resist the erosion of the innate original energy would only speed up the collapse of this heaven-opening artifact. Seeing that the Cosmos Wine Cauldron could not stop the erosion of the innate original energy at all, Longhuai ancestor had no choice but to hide in the passage formation. However, the innate original energy was spreading extremely fast in the passage formation. Longhuai wanted to hide, but the space left for him was indeed getting smaller and smaller. Left with no other choice, Longhuai could only use his true energy to prop up a protective shield to resist the assimilation of the innate original energy. Longhuai's face grew paler and paler, but his body became more and more like a withered tree trunk. If this continued, once Longhuai's true energy was completely assimilated, he himself would be completely integrated into the chaos, and there would be no chance of survival. Once the innate original energy filled the entire passage space, the passage formation would definitely collapse under the erosion of the innate original energy. In this way, the innate original energy would definitely wreak havoc in the entire cultivation world. The entire cultivation world would return to the chaos, and all the living beings in this world would be doomed. There must be a way. Lu Ping allowed the innate original energy to swallow his body, and he didn't hide in all directions like Longhuai. The protective shield formed from the fusion of the 8 quintessence true energies of the 8 realms became thinner and thinner under the assimilation of the innate original energy. However, all of this danger had already been forgotten by Lu Ping, and he just placed all of his energy into the changes in the space within his core. In this world, there was still his wife, his children, his masters, his relatives, and his friends from the sect. There were too many things that he was reluctant to part with in this world, too many things that he cared about, and too many things that were difficult to part with. Even though he wanted to leave this world to pursue the path of immortality, he was utterly unable to be like the 7th patriarch, who opened up the heavens and looked down upon the living beings of this world like dogs. As it turned out, the normal path of cultivation for the 9th realm of the true spirit realm was to completely fuse the 8 quintessence true energies from before. And once they returned to the chaos realm, the chaotic realm would naturally form. On the other hand, the innate original energy had to be nurtured after the cultivator advanced to the 9th realm of the true spirit realm, and it would become the key to charge into the divine spirit realm that represented immortality. The instant the innate original energy appeared, it gave Lu Ping a throbbing that came from his instincts, and it caused Lu Ping to have an insane and bold thought. Since the innate original energy is nurtured from the chaos realm, then if I can subdue a trace of it, I must succeed. Chapter 1592. While Lu Ping gambled on his life to subdue a wisp of innate origin energy, on the other side where the innate origin energy was spreading, Taoist Peng had already set up a trap and used the innate origin energy to destroy Taoist Gui's heaven-splitting divine weapon, the Cauldron of Creation. Facing Taoist Gui's sarcasm for losing his physical body, Peng Daoren did not care. Instead, he protected himself with the original power of thunder, then turned and rushed into the original power once again. Peng Daoren seemed to have lost his mind because of the hopelessness of immortality, but in fact, he still had one last hope. This hope, which should not have been within his control, kept the last trace of reason for Peng Daoren at the last moment. The Thunder Calabash of 7 Treasures, the second Thunder Calabash of 7 Treasures. He never thought that there would be a second Thunder Calabash of 7 Treasures in this world. Although this Thunder Calabash of 7 Treasures could not be mentioned in the same breath as the original power he possessed, and was only a newly formed one, this Thunder Calabash of 7 Treasures was indeed made from 49 kinds of natural magical items of all 7 natures. More importantly, this thunder calabash contained a rich original power of thunder. Now that he had lost his physical body again, Peng Daoren could totally use this thunder calabash as the foundation to rebuild his physical body. Although it was not as good as a living creature's body, a body born from 49 kinds of natural magical items could still be regarded as one of the best. Unable to escape, Patriarch Long Huai had just rushed into the innate essence Qi to find a way out when he ran into Taoist Peng. He tried to attack, but while the innate essence Qi greatly weakened the power of his essence divine abilities and spells, it did not weaken the essence of thunder, that was only fundamentally weaker than the innate essence Qi. Peng Daoren almost completely ignored Long Huai Ancestor's attacks, but Long Huai Ancestor was forced to retreat again and again in the face of Peng Daoren's powerful attacks. His protective power was about to collapse under the corrosion of Peng Daoren's powerful attacks and the original power of thunder. Long Huai Ancestor tried to escape, but how could he escape the pursuit of Peng Daoren, who controlled the original power of thunder? Under the continuous attacks, Long Huai Ancestor's power of thunder became riddled with holes. Helpless, Long Huai Ancestor could only transform into a huge wood dragon true spirit and turn around again to fight for his life. However, Peng Daoren's true spirit body instantly injured him. A long, sharp cry shook the entire tunnel, even causing the original power of the innate power of thunder to surge violently. What followed was a long, panicked cry, filled with unwillingness and panic. It even caused the true spirit dragon, who was fighting against the innate power of thunder that was invading Lu Ping's core space with all its might, to freeze for a moment. A sorrow that originated from his bloodline instantly invaded Lu Ping's entire mind. Both of them cultivated the Jiao bloodline, and even though Lu Ping's current achievements had gradually broken away from the boundaries of the Jiao bloodline, he could not deny that the source of his bloodline was still Jiao Doran's bloodline descendant in this world. As the inheritor of Jiao Doran's legacy, the quality of Long Huai's bloodline was the same as Jiao Doran's. Compared to the bloodline descendants Jiao Daoren had left in this world, Long Huai's bloodline was much higher. Relatively speaking, his bloodline was the closest to the true dragon bloodline that Lu Ping had fused with. At this instant, Patriarch Long Huai's desolate, sorrowful howl had finally awakened a trace of palpitation that was hidden within Lu Ping's body. However, this trace of palpitation wasn't within his bloodline, but within his divine sense. Lu Ping's divine sense began to shrink the moment the long, sorrowful cry sounded. Immediately after, Lu Ping felt his vision go black, as if his body had instantly sunk into a bottomless abyss. The feeling of continuously falling made him feel at a loss for a moment, and waves of panic swept through his entire body. A dragon's cry immediately broke the silence. Lu Ping could not help but sigh a long breath of relief. He suddenly felt his vision brighten, as if everything had returned to Lu Ping's control. However, the scene in front of him stunned Lu Ping. In the void, there was a sea floating in the sky, and a 9-colored true spirit dragon was overturning the sea in the sky, capturing a tiny fish that was swimming everywhere. A blooming lotus was flashing densely with runes, and it connected with the 12 multicolored light pearls that were revolving around the sea to form a multicolored light net, cooperating with the true spirit dragon in an attempt to limit the escape range of the fish that were being chased by the true spirit dragon. This was actually Lu Ping's core space. However, what really surprised him was not the sudden appearance of the inner vision in the core space. In fact, as the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation, Lu Ping could not only look inside, but also use his divine sense to condense his real body, or simply merge his divine sense into the true spirit dragon's body. However, this kind of descent was not one of the two. Separated by a clear light curtain, Lu Ping instantly realized that his divine sense had actually descended into the pure yang pearl that had been hanging high above the core space, helping the true spirit dragon to suppress the entire core space. Suddenly realizing something, Lu Ping hurriedly used his divine sense to check the image of himself. He discovered that the true spirit dragon trapped in the pure yang pearl looked exactly the same as the true spirit dragon in the floating sea. The true spirit dragon had a faint body, but it looked exactly the same as the one trapped in the floating sea. It was not condensed into the appearance of Lu Ping's real body, nor was it a fusion with the true spirit dragon, but the divine sense had automatically condensed into the shape of a dragon. At this moment, Lu Ping was not surprised at all. Instead, he felt as if it was natural for Lu Ping's divine sense to condense into the shape of a dragon. The true spirit dragon, which had used the natal gentian array to trap the trace of innate origin qi in a corner of the hanging sea, was still helpless. However, at this moment, the true spirit dragon suddenly roared into the sky and actually flew towards the divine sense that had transformed into the shape of a dragon in the pure yang pearl. The huge body of the true spirit dragon flew around the pure yang pearl in the core space, then opened its mouth, and the pure yang pearl, along with Lu Ping's divine sense, entered its stomach. Lu Ping felt his vision go black, and then everything in the core space returned to his eyes. This was different from the feeling of simply controlling the true spirit dragon with his divine sense. This time, the descent gave Lu Ping a feeling of fusion, as if he had completely fused with the true spirit dragon, coexisting and advancing together. Lu Ping carefully sensed all the changes brought about by the transformation of his divine sense into the shape of a dragon, and vaguely felt that some buried fragmented memories were slowly awakening. Soul, dragon soul, true dragon bloodline divinity. The sudden feeling of danger interrupted Lu Ping's contemplation. Only then did he realize that the trace of innate origin qi that had been trapped in a corner of the natal gentian array, with great difficulty, had broken free, while Lu Ping's soul was fusing with the true spirit dragon. Lu Ping smiled slightly, and the true spirit dragon raised a dragon claw towards the trace of innate origin qi. The moment the two came into contact, the trace of innate origin qi immediately entered the true spirit dragon's body. The true spirit dragon's body shone brightly. Lu Ping's origin foundation was not eroded by the innate origin qi at all. Below the reverse scale on its neck, 8 of the 9 rows of dragon scales shone with a different light. Only the row on its back was dim. Suddenly, the light around the true spirit dragon's body dimmed. If one looked closely, they would find that the 8 rows of dragon scales were still shimmering, but there seemed to be an invisible force devouring these flashing lights. All of a sudden, a speck of light appeared on the first dragon scale on the true spirit dragon's back. The color of the speck of light was extremely dim, but it was extremely eye-catching among the various attribute lights around the true spirit dragon's body. Anyone who saw it would definitely not ignore its existence. This spot of light gradually expanded. It still looked dim, but it was like an abyss, constantly devouring the flashing lights of the other elements around it, until it dyed the entire first dragon scale on its back. A loud boom sounded in Lu Ping's divine sense. The true spirit dragon roared towards the sky, and its core space expanded rapidly. The true spirit dragon's body swelled, and Lu Ping's dragon soul instantly returned to his body. The innate origin qi that had trapped Lu Ping could no longer cause any damage to his defensive ability. However, at this moment, Lu Ping completely released the defensive ability, and the surging innate origin qi surged in. Lu Ping's body was completely immersed in the rich innate origin qi. The innate origin qi that Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui were so wary of couldn't harm Lu Ping's body at all. Not only that, Lu Ping's body was like a black hole, devouring all the innate origin qi that surged into his body. A loud roar came from Lu Ping's body, attracting Peng Daoren, who was constantly searching in the innate origin qi. Endless bolts of lightning broke through the innate origin qi and fell around Lu Ping's body. Peng Daoren was aggressive. Clearly, he wanted to kill Lu Ping with a single strike. In front of Lu Ping's chest, the void was suddenly smashed open. A dragon head reached out from the void, opened its mouth, and let out a thunderous roar towards Peng Daoren. In an instant, all the bolts of lightning in the sky seemed to be summoned, gathering and falling into the dragon head's mouth. While Peng Daoren was still shocked by the sudden appearance of the dragon head, he saw a cloud of purple mist rise from the void, ignoring the innate origin qi, and instantly pervading the void around Peng Daoren. Peng Daoren cursed inwardly. Just as he was about to put up his guard, he suddenly felt a fierce wind blowing against his face. Peng Daran tried to dodge, but he found that his true spirit body seemed to be imprisoned. Vaguely, there seemed to be something like a tail sweeping towards him. Immediately, Peng Daran's true spirit body was knocked away, flying in midair. Peng Daran didn't care that his true spirit body was almost dispersing. He just roared in disbelief. Impossible. How can you ignore the innate origin Chi's corrosion? Impossible. Have you started cultivating the origin of chaos? Impossible. Cultivating all 9 levels at the same time. Absolutely impossible. Chapter 1593. When Lu Ping digested a trace of natural original power and completely activated the cultivation of the original chaos, the natural original power that pervaded the tunnel formation could no longer pose a threat to Lu Ping. On the contrary, as the first dragon scale representing the original chaos was digested, more and more natural original power began to be devoured by Lu Ping's body. After being digested, the natural original power was absorbed into the expansion of the original chaos. Soon, the second dragon scale on his back was digested as well. Within a radius of 30 feet around Lu Ping, the natural original power had even become thin because of the lack of supply. When the violent natural original power approached Lu Ping's body, it behaved so meekly. In front of Lu Ping, who had activated the original chaos, not only did its ability to assimilate all original powers lose its effect, as Lu Ping absorbed and digested more and more natural original power, it gradually began to be controlled by Lu Ping. Cultivation of all 9 states. Just like this, the legendary path to immortality, which led directly to the gods, unfolded before Lu Ping's eyes. At this moment, for the first time, Lu Ping could no longer hide anything from this world. Even the boundless starry sky did not make Lu Ping feel so close to it. For the first time, facing Peng Daran and Taoist Gui, who had just arrived, Lu Ping was looking down on them. Peng Daran's exclamation made Taoist Gui, who had just arrived, shudder. Terrified, Taoist Gui was about to attack Lu Ping. However, even though his powerful ability caused the connate origin Qi in the surrounding space to churn endlessly, it was unable to cause even the slightest ripple when it entered the purple mist that had formed an independent space within the connate origin Qi. Realizing what had happened, Taoist Gui turned around and attempted to flee, but he saw Peng Daran looking behind him with shock and a hint of inexplicable meaning in his eyes. Peng Daran's mouth moved up and down, seeming to say 2 words with difficulty, but no sound reached Taoist Gui's ears. All the fine hairs on Taoist Gui's body stood up, and all the energy in his body surged towards the light under his feet. However, unable to restrain the fear and curiosity in his heart, he turned around with difficulty to look behind him. True dragon. Taoist Gui finally understood what Peng Daran was trying to say. However, when he shouted out the 2 words, he seemed to have exhausted the last bit of strength in his body, leaving nothing but a desperate moan. The purple mist rose. The true dragon, which had never shown its true form outside the core space, finally showed its full power without any scruples. Its enormous true spirit swam in the rising purple mist, unscrupulously showing its magnificent, violent body in the air. Its body was like a snake, its legs like a crocodile, its scales like a carp, its horns like a deer, its ears like a cow, its mane like a horse, its claws like an eagle. The innate origin energy was still continuously fusing with the purple mist around the true spirit dragon. What frightened Taoist Gui and Taoist Peng even more was that although the true spirit dragon couldn't absorb all the innate origin energy that had been nurtured in this world for tens of thousands of years, it could gradually extend its divine sense and bring more and more of the innate origin energy into Lu Ping's control. We can't let him control all the original power. Taoist Peng came back to his senses and cried out in a shrill voice. What are you waiting for? That tree demon is just a decoy, and this human cultivator is the true trump card left behind by that 4-legged serpent. If he manages to control all the innate source energies, our several tens of thousands of years of planning will be for naught. Struck by Lu Ping's strike, Peng Daran's true spirit seemed to have dissipated, but at this moment, It was still struggling to restrain the original power around it, trying to fight again. Once again, Peng Daoren was easily knocked away by Lu Ping. However, Peng Daoren was a true spirit. His body was made of original power, and because he had activated the original power of thunder, although he was easily suppressed by Lu Ping, his original power was not harmed. In contrast, although Taoist Gui had a physical body to protect himself, because he was only a cultivator of the 5 stages at the same time, he couldn't effectively protect himself from the original power. Therefore, his physical body became a burden to him. Taoist Gui snorted coldly. His face turned even more ferocious as he stared at the proud true spirit, but he questioned loudly, "No." Back then, the 4-legged snake only had the bloodline of a true dragon, not to mention the divinity of a dragon's soul. How could we survive? The divinity of a dragon's soul can't belong to the 4-legged snake. Although the 4-legged snake is said to be a distant branch of a true dragon, it has never formed a true dragon's bloodline. As Jiao Doran's sworn enemy, Peng Daoren obviously knew Jiao Doran very well. Therefore, he immediately denied Taoist Gui's guess. Since the birth of this world, we have covered it with the net of original power. Based on the remoteness of this world in the infinite starry sky, and the combined strength of the 7 of us, if an immortal god hadn't happened to pass by here, he wouldn't have been able to find this world, let alone pass through the net of original power, and leave a branch of our bloodline in this world without alerting us. Up to this point, both of them were suddenly horrified. Peng Daoren shouted at Lu Ping, "You're not from this world. Who on earth are you?" From their words, Lu Ping could tell that they obviously regarded him as a descendant of a passing god, and he couldn't help but chuckle in his heart. But then, for no reason, Lu Ping's heart tightened. Perhaps Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui were frightened by his true dragon's soul, and made a wrong judgment. However, Peng Daoren's question made Lu Ping unable to tell right from wrong. His physical body came from this world, but his intelligence and consciousness seemed to be a mysterious grafting. Was he still a creature of this world? He used the totem patterns in his memories to condense his true spirit body, and as expected, he obtained the true dragon bloodline. The dragon-shaped soul that appeared at the last moment also made Lu Ping realize that the carrier of his psyche was already a dragon soul, but he didn't know it. He wondered if there was really a pair of invisible hands behind the scenes that pushed him to descend from another world to this one. At this moment, all these thoughts surged into Lu Ping's mind at the same time, but the truth seemed to be faintly discernible in these messy thoughts, making Lu Ping drown in them and unable to extricate himself. At this moment, Taoist Gui shouted, "Since you are a descendant of a god, why bother arguing with us? Since you have obtained the innate original power, please leave this world. We won't stop you anymore." Peng Daoren also said, "Sir, please leave. I will open the passage to the infinite starry sky for you." Chapter 1594. Sensing something, Lu Ping's mind was in a trance. His moment of hesitation allowed Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui to see an opportunity. They became more and more certain that Lu Ping must be a chess piece that some longevity almighty from the infinite starry sky had casually set up in this world. What he wanted was the innate essence energy that was born in this world at the beginning of its birth. At this time, after Lu Ping activated the Chaos Realm and cultivated all 9 realms at the same time, the overwhelming advantage he displayed made Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui fearful. They had to make concessions, trying to trade most of the innate essence energy for Lu Ping to leave this world. The trance in Lu Ping's mind only lasted for a moment. Naturally, Lu Ping understood what the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu were planning. However, since entering the passageway formation and fighting against the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu, he had seen that the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu possessed extraordinary abilities. Even in seemingly hopeless situations, the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu always had a way to turn defeat into victory and seek a way out of death. While Lu Ping was dazzled, he had to admire the cunning and fierce means of the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu. At the same time, Lu Ping could not tell how many trump cards the 2 Heaven Creator Laozu had in their hands, and how many tricks they had up their sleeves. He wondered if the two heaven creator Laozu were just trying to fool him again. Therefore, Lu Ping had not responded to their pleas. Instead, he had been doing his best to absorb the innate essence energy to consolidate the newly activated chaos realm. At the same time, he had been on guard against the two heaven creator Laozu, ready to attack at any moment against the two heaven creator monsters who had lived for countless years. Apart from that, Lu Ping tried his best to extend his divine sense out, trying to control the innate origin qi in the passageway array formation as much as possible. This was to prevent the innate origin qi from entering the cultivation world after the passageway array formation was destroyed. If that happened, it would be an apocalyptic disaster for the entire cultivation world. Lu Ping's momentum soared. The two sky-opening Taoist Laozu were very experienced, so how could they not see through Lu Ping's plan? They looked at each other, and Taoist Gui said first, "So, Your Excellency, you are not going to let us go?" Peng Daoren was more direct. He shouted, "So what if Your Excellency is a cultivator of the 9 realms at the same time? At worst, I will destroy this great array and let the innate essence energy leak into this world. At that time, we will all be separated. Even if Your Excellency can ignore the innate essence energy, Your Excellency's friends and families in this world will not be spared." Lu Ping's expression turned cold. The huge head of the dragon of true spirit suddenly poked out of the purple mist. Its majestic momentum made the two sky-opening Taoist Laozu stagnate. Then Lu Ping said coldly, "Are you two threatening me?" Light flashed around Taoist Gui, and he actually broke free from the suppression of Lu Ping's momentum. Although it was just a trick, it still made Lu Ping's fear of these two sky-opening Taoist Laozu deepened, and his killing intent naturally grew stronger. The change in Lu Ping's expression and momentum could not be hidden from the two sky-opening Taoist Laozu. But Taoist Gui still seemed to be trying to persuade Lu Ping, saying, "I dare not. If Your Excellency is a descendant of an immortal from the infinite starry sky, then you must understand that once the innate essence energy leaks out, not only will this world suffer, but the origin net that envelopes this world will also collapse. When that happens, this world will lose its concealment formation and will inevitably be found by the experts in the starry sky. Even if Your Excellency can protect this world for a while the innate essence energy is wreaking havoc, you will not be able to stop the experts from the starry sky who hear the news and rush over. I believe Your Excellency knows what innate essence energy means to the experts of the starry sky who pursue immortality." Lu Ping said angrily, "From the birth of this world until now, the 7 of you have poured your blood, sweat, and tears into this world. The living beings in this world even worship the 7 of you as the Sky Creator Grandmasters. Are you all willing to watch this world be destroyed by others?" Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui glanced at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. Seeing that Lu Ping's expression became even angrier and was about to attack, Peng Daoren put away the smile on his face and said indifferently, "Your Excellency, you are now cultivating in the 9 realms at the same time. In the future, you will certainly be a mighty figure in the infinite starry sky. You'd better not say such childish words." Taoist Gui continued, "We created this world for the sake of primordial original qi, and the creatures in this world were merely raised to produce primordial original qi. Their lives and cultivation methods were given to them by us, so it's only right that we take them back. By saying this, Your Excellency, you are putting yourself in the same position as an ant, which makes you a laughingstock." "Ants?" Lu Ping's eyes flickered with a strong killing intent. "In your eyes, the creatures in this world are nothing but ants that you can kill at will?" No sooner had Lu Ping's voice faded than Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui both pounced forward. They did not attack Lu Ping. Instead, one of them fled towards the passage formation, while the other returned to the void where the net of origin was broken, and the innate essence energy gushed out. Lu Ping naturally knew that the two of them weren't trying to escape. On the contrary, they were already at each other's throats. Taoist Gui ran towards the tunnel array formation to destroy it and leak the innate origin energy. Taoist Peng, on the other hand, was trying to destroy the origin net that covered this new world. exposing this newly born world to the endless starry sky. They split up, so that Lu Ping would not be able to take care of everything at the same time. Either way, it would be an apocalyptic disaster for the creatures in this world. However, their actions did not surprise Lu Ping, who had been prepared for this. In the void, one multicolored light after another lit up in the passage formation, directly passing through the innate essence energy and the purple mist. 12 light balls floated high in the air around the formation. Then beams of multicolored light shot out from each light ball and intertwined with the other 11 light balls. Soon, an enormous multicolored space was formed. 12 gentian pearls. Innate spirit treasures. Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui cried out almost at the same time. In the void, they ran into a wall one after another. Panic appeared on their faces, but at the same time, they decided to fight desperately. Perhaps even Lu Ping did not know how powerful his gentian formation would be after it absorbed the innate essence energy. However, when Peng Daoren's true spirit and Taoist Gui's true spirit joined hands for the first time and tried to break the gentian formation, a jade white lotus quietly bloomed in the gentian space and instantly merged with the entire gentian space. Chapter 1595. Lu Ping's natal gentian formation. After Lu Ping risked his life to refine a strand of innate origin qi and activate the chaos origin cultivation, although Lu Ping was still trying his best to absorb and refine the innate origin qi, it was not so easy to condense the chaotic mirror's natal magical power. The amount of innate origin qi he could absorb was extremely limited, and it was impossible for him to succeed in condensing it in a short period of time. Only a small part of the innate origin qi that was refined was stored in a row of dragon scales on his back. Most of the refined innate origin qi was absorbed by the spirit treasures in the core space, and the 13 spirit treasures of the natal gentian formation absorbed the most innate origin qi. Lu Ping had already predicted that the two sky openers Laozu would not sit back and watch the innate origin qi fall into his hands so easily. While the two sky openers Laozu were trying to buy time, Lu Ping was also pretending to be courteous to them. With the help of the innate origin qi, Lu Ping seemed to be trying his best to control the innate origin qi, but at the same time, he had already secretly arranged the natal gentian formation in the channel formation. The two sky openers Laozu were waiting for the moment when Lu Ping relaxed, and Lu Ping was also waiting for the moment when the natal gentian formation was successfully arranged. How did the 12 gentian beads end up in your hands? Who are you? How did the treasure that the four-legged serpent had schemed for so long, but failed to succeed, fall into your hands? Peng Daoren's face was filled with disbelief. Jiao Daoren was known as a sword cultivator, but Peng Daoren had long known that after Jiao Daoren failed to refine his natal flying sword, he began to focus on the innate origin qi. The 12 gentian beads were left behind by Jiao Daoren in order to fight for the innate origin qi, but he had to give them up because his origin was severely damaged by the poisonous pill. Being loyal to the sword was nothing in front of immortality. 13 innate spirit treasures. 13 innate spirit treasures. Why? How is this possible? Taoist Gui screamed hysterically. The gentian great formation was successfully set up, and the two sky creator Laozu were trapped in it. However, the shock brought to them by the 13 innate spirit treasures was clearly far greater than their estimation of their own safety. Beams of 5-colored light swept across the formation one after another. Each beam of light would scrape away a layer of Taoist Gui's and Taoist Gui's original essence. No matter how hard they tried to restrain their powers and panic, or how hard they tried to defend themselves with all kinds of methods, they could not stop their original essence from flowing away. After losing his physical body, Taoist Ping's true spirit body shrank the fastest. Although Taoist Gui still had his physical body to slow down the loss of his original power, he couldn't completely stop the loss of original power. No matter how hard they tried, they still failed to break the gentian great formation. Therefore, they had to join hands and attack one point, trying to break one gentian bead to break the entire gentian great formation. But at this moment, a misty light instantly filled the entire gentian great formation. Immediately, Taoist Gui and Taoist Gui felt as if they were in a swamp, and it was difficult for them to move. When they looked down, they saw circles of light spreading out from the blooming white jade lotus. The formation formed by the spell symbols on the petals echoed with the 12 gentian beads, firmly suppressing Taoist Gui and Taoist Gui in the formation. The wings of Peng Doran's body of true spirit flapped swiftly. With Peng Doran as the center, bolts of thunderbolts struck wildly towards the gentian great formation. At this moment, only the thunderbolts transformed from the original essence of thunder could destroy the sweeping five-colored light and cause a substantial impact on the gentian great formation. Meanwhile, Taoist Gui tried his best to protect Peng Doran with his turtle body, blocking the remaining five-colored light in the formation. At this moment, under the pressure from Lu Ping, Taoist Gui and Taoist Gui, who had always been suspicious of each other, finally gave their backs to each other. With the two of them working together, they were able to temporarily resist the attack of the Yuanchun Grand Array. However, both of them knew that in such a situation, even if Lu Ping did not make a move and only used the power of the Grand Array to encircle and suppress them, it was only a matter of time before the two of them were defeated. A sharp sword whistle pierced their eardrums. When they raised their heads to look, Emoli had already arrived in front of them, bringing with it a monstrous killing intent. The ferocious killing intent gushed towards them, but it also contained traces of innate origin energy. This was a pre-world flying sword spirit treasure, another pre-world spirit treasure. By now Laozu and Taoist Gui had no time to be angry. Taoist Gui had to try to block Lu Ping's meteor-like sword light with the shell of his true spirit. But to his surprise, a bolt of pre-world thunderbolt arrived first. With a deafening boom, the thunderbolt spread across the true spirit of Peng Doran and froze the true spirit of Peng Doran in midair. Peng Doran never thought that Lu Ping would release the 15th pre-world spirit treasure so easily. Frozen in midair by the pre-world thunderbolt, Taoist Gui could no longer block Lu Ping's pre-world flying sword. The sword hacked directly at the true spirit of Peng Doran, who was caught off guard. Under Moli's flying sword, the true spirit of Peng Doran, which was originally condensed from the 8 original powers, seemed to have a physical form. Half of its wings were torn from its true spirit, and Peng Doran's roar of pain was no longer filled with anger, only sorrow and despair. Taoist Gui knew that once Peng Doran was killed by Lu Ping, he would no longer be able to fight back. At this moment, he had no choice but to forcibly break free from the restraint of the original thunderbolt, even at the cost of his own physical strength. However, just as the gigantic Ba Gui true body moved, a 30-meter-tall purple-gold dragon appeared above the Ba Gui true body. A dragon claw slowly pressed down on the void, and the giant turtle head did not even have time to let out a roar before it was smashed down with a loud bang. No matter how much the Ba Gui true body struggled, it could not break free from the suppression of the true spirit dragon. The true dragon opened its mouth, and a huge dragon ball flew out. After absorbing enough innate origin chi, the pure yang dragon ball had transformed into an innate dragon ball. The natural dragon ball hovered above Peng Doran's head and rotated slightly, following which, the entire space of the Gentian Great Formation seemed to rotate along with it. A great amount of original power spread out from Peng Doran's true spirit, and the true spirit of Peng Doran, who was unable to move in the air, shrank a little. The natural dragon ball rotated again, and the original power contained in Peng Doran's true spirit kept dispersing, until Priest Gui's true spirit shrank to the size of a palm. Priest Gui screamed in horror as he was imprisoned in the dragon ball, then swallowed by the true spirit dragon. While the true spirit dragon was suppressing Priest Gui's true spirit, Peng Doran's true spirit, which had half of its wing cut off by Emoli, changed its shape. The missing wing grew back, but the size of Peng Doran's true spirit had shrunk by 30%. However, Lu Ping wouldn't give him a chance to catch his breath. As soon as the innate flying sword slashed down, the rock true spirit's true form shrunk again. Without the protection of his mortal body, the rock true spirit's true form shrunk again. Peng Doran knew that his life was at stake, but when he turned back to look at Priest Gui, he saw that Priest Gui's true spirit was shrinking rapidly. After being imprisoned by the Dragon Ball and swallowed by the Dragon Ball, Peng Daoren knew that he could no longer turn the situation around. With a sonorous cry, Peng Daoren's true spirit, which had become a little thin due to the loss of its original power, suddenly began to turn red, as if this true spirit was going to rebuild its physical body again. However, Lu Ping was startled. He knew that this was a sign that Peng Daoren was going to self-destruct. Hurriedly, he pointed a finger at Peng Daoren, and a thunderbolt darted out of the calabash. Almost at the same time, the thunderbolt pierced through the air and was about to land on Peng Daoren's true spirit. Naturally, Taoist Peng wasn't willing to give up so easily. He also struck out a bolt of lightning from his true form. As long as he could stall Lu Ping for a moment, his Peng true form would self-destruct and at least drag Lu Ping down with him. However, the moment the innate thunderbolt from the calabash touched Peng Daoren's true spirit, it coiled around Peng Daoren's true spirit like a rope and instantly subdued Peng Daoren's original power with its abundant original power. Then, the thunderbolt flew back up, coiled around Peng Daoren's true spirit and tied it up. Amidst Peng Daoren's shrill and terrified howls, the thunderbolt was dragged back to the calabash by the thunderbolt. Taoist Peng was completely swallowed up by the seven treasures lightning calabash. The violent tremors caused the origin lightning within the lightning calabash to scatter in all directions. The lightning calabash continued to swell, as if it would explode at any moment. An arm suddenly reached out from the air and grabbed the calabash. The calabash, which was shaking violently and about to explode, immediately calmed down. Occasionally, a few thunderbolts would spurt out of the calabash's mouth, making it look like a child who was burping after eating too much. The original power in the 12 Genshin formation, which was shaken by the Great Battle, was gradually calmed down by Lu Ping after the deaths of Peng Daoren and Priest Gui. Standing in the air, Lu Ping didn't immediately deactivate the 12 Genshin formation. Instead, he stood there silently for a long time, as if he was thinking about something. A golden-purple true dragon hovered around him, looking very happy. Chapter 1596. The tunnel formation that was about to collapse. Part of the original net was damaged, and the remaining innate original energy was drifting in all directions. After dispersing the 12 Genshin formation, Lu Ping saw a scene of devastation in front of him. Although Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui were killed one after another, and most of the scattered innate original energy was under Lu Ping's control, there was still a small amount of original energy that might scatter in the cultivation world as the tunnel formation was activated. Once an ordinary cultivator came into contact with a strand of original energy, his cultivation would be completely dissolved. On the other hand, if Taoist Peng couldn't repair the net of essence that was torn by releasing his innate essence energy in time, the grand formation that concealed this world would inevitably fail, exposing this newborn world to the boundless starry sky. How could the few cultivators born in this world, who had just condensed their true spirits, resist the covetous eyes of the powerful beings in the boundless starry sky? Lu Ping looked up at the infinite starry sky behind the broken original net. At this moment, there was no one in this world who could stop him from pursuing the path of immortality. As long as he took one step forward, he would be able to fulfill the wish of this world's cultivators, which had been repeatedly pursued since the beginning of the world, but had never been able to achieve it. But now, with such a rotten scene, if Lu Ping really stood aside and did nothing, this world would inevitably once again be under the control of the experts in the starry sky who heard the news, and the creatures in this world would probably once again be domesticated like the seventh patriarch, including his wife, children, sex, teachers, and friends. But if he wanted to repair the original net, restrain the innate original energy, and delay Lu Ping from leaving this world, it was a small matter. What was more frightening was that even with Lu Ping's current strength of the 9 realms, he was not sure that he could really clean up the current situation. Although Lu Ping had activated the 9 realms, in fact, he had only cultivated the water original energy to perfection. Strictly speaking, he was still only a level 1 true spirit cultivator. Although his current strength could be regarded as one of the top-level one true spirit cultivators in the infinite starry sky, his strength was still far from that of the seventh patriarch, who had fought in the tunnel formation at the beginning of the world. Peng Daoren could stabilize the original net and suppress the innate original energy with his true spirit body, because he was a level 7 true spirit cultivator. Even so, after 30,000 years, when he finally rebuilt his body with great difficulty, he only had the strength of level 1 true spirit cultivator. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then slowly opened his palm. 12 grape-sized multicolored light beads were flying irregularly on a petite white jade lotus. Lu Ping still seemed to be worried. The innate dragon bead flew out of the true spirit dragon's mouth and directly fell into the small gentian formation in his palm. Then, the true spirit dragon's body continued to shrink, and it rushed into the formation after the dragon bead. The formation in his palm trembled, and as the dragon bead rotated in the formation, a trace of multicolored light peeled off from one of the gentian beads. Under the control of Lu Ping's divine sense, the two broken threads of the original net were slowly connected. Every time a trace of multicolored light peeled off from the gentian bead, Lu Ping could feel that the innate original energy he had absorbed was weakened a little. The gentian bead, which had been promoted to an innate spiritual treasure, naturally fell a little. Lu Ping could only extend his divine sense as far as possible into the entire tunnel formation, trying to gather some of the scattered and thin innate original energy to make up for his loss. However, this move had little effect. Even if you can repair the original net like this, what can you do? The tunnel formation is bound to collapse. Once you leave, the innate original energy will lose its suppression, and it will definitely spread to the entire world of cultivation. When that happens, the harm it will cause will be much more serious than the disaster of Mara. The sudden words did not surprise Lu Ping at all. It was as if Lu Ping had already expected that there were still people alive in the tunnel formation. So what? At the very least, it's much better than exposing this world to the infinite starry sky. No other experts from the starry sky will descend upon this world, and I will not raise the living beings of this world like livestock, nor will I seal off the passage to the starry sky in search of longevity. Lu Ping had already repaired most of the damaged original net in front of him, but the price he paid was that he had lost nearly half of the innate original energy he had absorbed. Lu Ping looked at the wood serpent's true soul, which had lost its physical body and was only barely surviving with its original energy essence. What do you think, fellow Taoist Long Huai? The Long Huai ancestor had been easily injured by Peng Daoren's true soul. Under the assimilation and erosion of the innate original energy, the Long Huai ancestor had no choice but to abandon its physical body and live on as a true soul for the time being. Fortunately, Lu Ping had suddenly launched an attack at that time, using the 12 gentian formation to trap and kill the two sky splitters Laozu, and taking control of most of the innate original energy. This allowed the Long Huai ancestor's true soul to escape the continuous erosion of the innate original energy. The Long Huai ancestor smiled sadly and said, "Fellow Taoist, it's naturally a blessing for this world to have such a broad-minded mind. It's a pity that the old man was so conceited and arrogant that he thought he could lead the people of this world to open a path to immortality. I'm afraid that Lu Xiaoyu has been secretly laughing at me for a long time." Lu Ping raised his hand and interrupted the Long Huai ancestor. He said frankly, "Fellow Taoist, don't belittle yourself. Although I've had some fortuitous encounters before coming to this channel formation, I'm far inferior to fellow Taoist. I have great respect for what you've done. As for the fact that we were able to defeat the strong enemy in the end, it's all thanks to fellow Taoist and the others risking their lives to kill us. That Peng Daoren and Taoist Gui schemed against each other and treated us like ants. It's only because of our arrogance that I got lucky." Despite Lu Ping's humble persuasion, the Long Huai ancestor still couldn't get over it. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist, do you need me to do anything else?" The Long Huai ancestor took a deep look at Lu Ping and said, "Fellow Taoist, you don't have to pretend that you don't know anything. By now, What else can the old man and the others do other than beg for their lives? Lu Ping's expression didn't change at all, as if he had already expected this. He said doubtfully, I've sensed the weak aura of the butterfly fairy before. The true spirit body of the Longhui ancestor, which was completely condensed from the source, was unexpectedly able to express an expression of great fortune. He said, I think it's because the two sky creator Laozu schemed against each other and had no time to take care of each other. That's why the butterfly fairy's true spirit managed to preserve a strand of its source. However, I still need fellow Taoists to help me. Lu Ping nodded calmly and said, I'll do my best. However, I wonder if fellow Taoist Xiao Baiyu's true spirit still has a strand of true spirit? Ever since the 18 true spirit cultivators had gathered in the northern ice field to attack the Great Formation, the entire cultivation world had sunk into an unprecedented peace. It could be said that ever since the seventh patriarch had opened the sky, the entire cultivation world had never been so united for a single goal. However, for cultivators who had the heart to advance in their lives, most of their gazes were placed on the sects that had true spirit inheritances. They were filled with anticipation and apprehension as they waited for the news from these sections. The 18 true spirits had gathered in the northern ice field. Other than a few rogue cultivators with unknown backgrounds, the rest of them had left behind their soul lamps in their respective sects and clans, guarded by the highest level cultivators in their respective sects and clans. However, what most of the cultivators in the cultivation world did not know was that the top cultivators of the sects and clans that the true spirit cultivators belonged to had already reached a tacit understanding in private. The Great Formation would definitely be broken through. The only difference was the amount of casualties. In other words, regardless of whether the Great Formation could be broken through by the 18 true spirit cultivators or not, the sects and clans that these true spirit cultivators belonged to would report the good news to the entire cultivation world. After the life and death struggle of the true spirit cultivators, the Great Formation had finally been broken through, and the path to immortality was no longer blocked. If the soul lamps of the true spirit cultivators that went to the northern ice field were all extinguished, and the entire cultivation world knew about it, the so-called path to immortality would become an illusion. The various large sects and clans that controlled this world could not imagine the scene of the entire cultivation world collapsing at that time, so they could only prepare to deceive the entire cultivation world. And these sects and clans were naturally prepared to help each other, in case the situation deteriorated to the point where it could not be salvaged. The 18 true spirit cultivators entered the Great Formation at the same time, and the soul lamps that were left behind dimmed before lighting up again. This made the high-level cultivator's heart jump into his throat before fiercely falling back down. The peak human and demon races did not hesitate to spend large amounts of resources to create the fastest way to transmit information. In just the time it takes to make a cup of tea, there was information from the Tenma people, Lingyun Valley, Skyward Pavilion, Wuxia School, Crystal Palace, Peacock Royalty, and the multicolored Tiger Clan that was sent to these sects and powers. 7 soul lamps extinguished. This meant that 7 true spirit cultivators had fallen in a short period of time after the Great Formation was opened. 7 true spirit cultivators. Although the various large sects and clans were already prepared for their true spirit cultivators to fall, the scene of 7 true spirit cultivators falling in one fell swoop still gave everyone an unprecedented shock. Keep it a secret. This was the first reaction of the sects and clans that the 18 true spirit cultivators belonged to. Even facing the anxious questions of the entire cultivation world, they were already prepared to announce that everything was going smoothly. However, at this time, there were several cultivators in the Central Plains who claimed to be a disciple of a rogue cultivator, Yao Xian Laozu, who went to the Great Formation. They claimed that their master's soul lamp had extinguished after entering the Great Formation. When the news spread, it immediately caused panic in the nearby cultivation world. And as the news spread, this kind of panic was bound to spread far and wide. There were even quite a few cultivators who heard the news and either went to find these rogue cultivators to seek confirmation, or flew towards the Holy Land sects in an attempt to verify the existence of the other true spirit cultivators. Unexpectedly, not long after this news spread, pure young cultivators from the Purple Sun Palace, Wuxia School, Lingyun Valley, and the multicolored Tiger Clan came to encircle and annihilate them. Although these Yaoxian Laozu's disciples were quite strong, facing the joint attacks of the Holy Lands and tribes, they were quickly destroyed. Following that, facing the inquiries of the various forces in the cultivation world, the various large sects and tribes all came out to clarify, proving that their true spirit Laozu's soul lamp was still burning, and that the cultivation world should not be used by people with ulterior motives. Just as Jinling, Skyrend, and the other new sects and tribes calmed the panicking cultivation world, the bad news of the extinguished soul lamps of the Profound Sky sect, Green Sea Snakes, and Purple Sun Palace came. Although these sects and tribes could still maintain stability on the surface, their powerful cultivators were already making their final plans. With the fall of Wise Ape, among the human and demon forces in the world, only the spiritual demon clan's Longhui ancestor, Bagui clan's Xiang Laozu, insect clan's Butterfly Fairy, Skyren's Xiao Baiyu, and Jinling's Lu Taiping's soul lamps were still burning. At this time, all the hopes of this world had fallen on these 5 true spirit cultivators. At this time, even Lu Ping did not expect that Xiao Baiyu still had a trace of his true spirit. After his physical body was heavily injured by Peng Daoren, it had been damaged by the successive battles between the two sides. The rock true spirit's essence could not stop the subsequent destruction of the innate origin qi. However, at the last moment, Xiao Baiyu had successfully escaped a trace of his true spirit into his natal flying sword spiritual treasure. The quality of his natal flying sword itself was extraordinary. It was refined from a broken sword abandoned by Jiao Daoren when he opened up the East Sea cultivation world. Although it was almost destroyed by the erosion of the innate origin qi, it still retained the last trace of Xiao Baiyu's true spirit. Lu Ping nourished the broken flying sword in his hand with his own essence, maintaining the last trace of Xiao Baiyu's true spirit. He said to the Wood Dragon True Spirit and the Butterfly Fairy Maiden, who could barely maintain a true spirit shadow, but could not speak, "I hope you too have thought it through. If this is the case, the 3 of you together with fellow Taoist Xiao are no match for Peng Daoren. Although you can live for 1,000 years, you will be trapped in this world for 1,000 years without any progress in your cultivation. And after 1,000 years, I don't know if I can step into the realm of immortality. If there is no immortal God to save you, the 3 of you can only sit and wait to be assimilated by the origin qi of this world, which is no different from dying." The Butterfly True Spirit could not speak. She could only bow to Lu Ping and plead. The Longhui ancestor smiled bitterly and said, "Our bodies were destroyed, and the origin qi of our true spirits were damaged. We are already people who are about to die. After 1,000 years, if fellow Taoist Xiao can step into the path of immortality and rebuild our bodies, we will have the chance to pursue immortality again. That would be a great blessing. If not, we will be lucky to live for 1,000 years." Lu Ping nodded and said, "Very well. Although I have collected most of the innate origin qi, the net of origin has been damaged. Although it has been repaired, it will be difficult to guarantee that it will not be damaged again after a long time. Furthermore, the passage formation has been opened. Before there is an expert who can protect this world, in order to prevent the future people from revealing the location of this world, we need someone who can protect the origin qi of this world at all times. At the same time, we need to inform the future people of these secrets." The Longhui ancestor nodded and said, "In that case, many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao." Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's nothing. If I am lucky enough to step into the divine spirit realm within 1,000 years, the 3 of you will be nurtured by the origin qi for 1,000 years. Once your bodies are rebuilt, your cultivation will increase greatly. However, if I don't live forever, it will be difficult for me to return. Zhenling, please take care of it for me." The Longhui ancestor said, "Rest assured, fellow Taoist Xiao. I promise on behalf of the other 2 Taoists that Zhenling will prosper for 1,000 years." The passage formation was collapsing. The few true spirit cultivators who stayed behind to guard this world could clearly feel the drastic changes coming from the northern ice fields. For a moment, these true spirit cultivators felt as if a shackle that they had never felt before had suddenly been released. Everyone felt relaxed for no reason. Even the true spirits in the core space condensed their origin chi a little faster, and the speed at which they condensed their origin chi was still increasing. Everyone looked towards the distant north in unison. They had a happy thought in their hearts. Could it be that the natural moat that sealed this world had finally been broken through? Just as many sects and clans were hesitating whether they should send their cultivators to the northern ice fields to investigate, a piece of news from the southern sea instantly dropped everyone's enthusiasm to rock bottom. Bagui Xiang Laozu's soul lamp had been extinguished. Did they fail? Many high-level cultivators were filled with doubt again. However, they immediately comforted themselves. There were still 4 people alive, so there was still hope. However, everyone's confidence was constantly being eroded. The 12 Genshin formation was activated once again. The 5-colored rays of light once again drew out the web of origins. However, they were not repairing it this time. Instead, they pierced the threads of the web of origins through Long Huai and Butterfly Fairy's true bodies, as well as Xiao Baiyu's remaining true spirit. Xiao Baiyu's origin chi was the first to merge with the world's natural source through the web of origins. Following that, Fairy Butterfly's illusory true spirit gradually shrank until it was completely absorbed into the natural source of the world. The Longhuai ancestors with serpent true spirit circled in the air. It seemed like it wanted to say something, but was hesitant. Lu Ping said in surprise, "Do you still have something to say?" The Longhuai ancestor looked at Lu Ping and said, "Are you really not a being of this world? Are you really a descendant of the true dragon? A descendant of the dragon?" Lu Ping clapped his hands and laughed. "It's true that I'm a descendant of the dragon, but I'm also a being of this world. I've stepped into the infinite starry sky, not only to pursue the path of immortality, but also to find some secrets that have happened to me." The Longhuai ancestor was still confused, but it was already too late to ask. His true spirit merged with this world, and the web of origins was rewoven. However, it left behind a spatial door that allowed one to exit but not to enter. It led directly to the infinite starry sky outside this world. Just as he was about to take a step out of this world, Lu Ping suddenly turned back to look at this world. There was a hint of reluctance in his blurry eyes. He suddenly waved his sleeves, and an item fell into this world. Then, without looking back, Lu Ping turned and stepped into the infinite starry sky. Just as the entire world of cultivation was enveloped in an uneasy atmosphere, in the northernmost part of the northern ice plains, a tragic light suddenly cut through the sky. As the living beings in this world watched, the light crossed the northern ice plains, passed through the Middle-earth, and directly fell toward the northern sea. Such a movement had naturally alarmed the true spirit cultivator Taichu Laozu, who was guarding Lu Ping's soul lamp in Jinling's 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. However, before Taichu Laozu could leave the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, the light had already arrived in the sky above Jinling's sect. Then, it ignored Jinling's sect-protecting formation that could withstand a true spirit cultivator's attack, and directly entered the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. Several rays of light filled with dense pure yang qi instantly rose from Tianling Mountain. They chased after the rays of light, and entered the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. They saw a small person that was a foot tall, similar to Taiping Laozu, chatting happily with Taichu Laozu. It was Lu Ping's avatar, Lu Xiaoping, who had been severely injured by Peng Daren previously. Seeing that many powerful cultivators of Jinling had gathered in the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, the small person opened his mouth and yawned, saying, "That's how it is. You can tell them yourself. I was seriously injured this time. Although Master injected a lot of origin chi into me, it will probably take 200 to 300 years for me to fully recover. However, once I recover, I will also step into the true spirit realm. In the future, I will guard Jinling until Master enjoys longevity and returns to this world." After saying that, a ray of light rose around Lu Xiaoping, and he escaped into the depths of the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven. The pure young cultivators of Jinling could not even see his figure with their eyes. When they turned to look at Taichu Laozu with questioning eyes, they saw that he was holding a burning soul lamp in his hand and said with joy, "Everyone, the path to longevity beyond the infinite starry sky has opened." Time passed slowly, and 1,000 years passed in a flash. A mysterious divine dragon tribe member, who had wandered outside, had made a name for himself in the infinite starry sky in the past 1,000 years. Until 100 years ago, this cultivator, who was called Purple Gold Dragon Sword by the powerhouses in the infinite starry sky, cultivated 9 realms at the same time and gave birth to the innate. He broke through the divine spirit realm in one fell swoop and achieved the divine dragon Dao body. He enjoyed the position of longevity and shocked the starry sky. This purple gold dragon sword, Lu Taiping revealed that he came from a world that was born less than 30,000 years ago. For 1,000 years, the number of true spirit cultivators that came from this world had reached more than 20. However, these true spirit cultivators had always kept the secret of their origins. It was not until Lu Taiping Laozu achieved longevity and had the qualifications to protect this world that this newly born world gradually appeared in the eyes of the powerhouses in the starry sky. After 1,000 years, Jinling was still prosperous. Lu Ping's descendants had formed a family that was attached to Jinling and was famous in the entire cultivation world. However, his 2 wives did not step into the true spirit realm and eventually passed away. His 4 children all became famous in the cultivation world. 2 of them successfully passed through the 3rd lightning tribulation and became pure yang. But in the end, only the eldest son became a true spirit dragon. Most of the people he knew back then had died, and only a few people successfully left this world. In a trance, this world suddenly became strange to Lu Ping. In the end, I don't belong here anymore. Lu Ping could not help but sigh. Behind him, Longhuai ancestor, who had already reconstructed his body, heard this and laughed. But the living beings in this world have always been proud of you. Lu Ping did not comment, but just said, "Let's go, this place belongs to the past. The exciting things are always in the future." And you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.